Chapter 1248. After about an hour, White Bear, White, and the others slowly came back, each of them beaming with joy. Before Yun Yang could ask, White Bear took the initiative to explain that not only had he successfully received his reward, he had also given him an extra 2,000 cent coins. They had earned a total of 3,000 Yuan coins from this trip, a huge profit indeed. This must be related to that ring. I just don't know what's inside that ring. Zhang Heng muttered to himself. Just a spatial ring and they've given us so much more reward. Why didn't they come a few more times for this kind of work? Every day, the more the better. How regretful. Why didn't I open it secretly to broaden my horizons? Yin Yang was in the room, his expression filled with utter disdain. Of course, White Bear and the rest did not know what was in the storage ring, but how could it escape the sharp eyes of the great sect leader Yun? He had seen it long ago. If it was really something good, how could the 9-feet-high sect leader Yun let it go? He would have taken it away long ago. Why would he leave it for the receiving demons to receive? There was only a sword in the ancient ring. The quality of the sword was only equivalent to the bound of Universe's upper-class standard. How could it possibly catch Yin Yang's attention? There were also some so-called treasures of heaven and earth, but they were all useful to the demon race, but they were not top-notch goods. Not wanting to alert the enemy, Yin Yang let them go with the mentality that the loss outweighed the gain. Of course, the main reason was that the goods were too ordinary, they could not pique a certain someone's interest anymore. After that, Yin Yang casually gave a few pointers to the bear's cultivation base. With just a few words, the bear's cultivation base actually showed signs of a breakthrough. White Bear and the rest felt as if they had seen a celestial being. Master was amazing indeed. He was indeed a top-notch expert of the older generation. The so-called profound words of wisdom and enlightenment were probably nothing more than this, right? While the demon bears rejoiced, they were even more thankful for their good luck. They had inexplicably stumbled into the gates of hell, but they had managed to walk out of the path of survival. Not only did they walk out of the path of survival, they had even found a master like this. Their luck was unparalleled. The next morning, White Bear, White, and the others rented a stall next to the inn, placed the goods they had harvested during this period of time on it, and began to peddle. Anything that was slightly more valuable could be sent to the auction house, but the things that White Bear, White, and the others were selling were not qualified to be auctioned. In other words, although these things were exchanged after risking their lives, compared to real treasures, they were not worth much at all. They were not worth much at all. With a thought, Yin Yang took out 2 jars of amethyst honey and filled them into 100 small bottles for White Bear to sell. You can only take out 10 bottles at a time. He would take it out every hour. The bowl you drank earlier was diluted. This one is undiluted. Also, this master's amethyst honey is extraordinary. It's the honey of the queen bee. How can ordinary amethyst honey compare to it? This was indeed the honey of the queen bee. Although amethyst honey was a premium item that was priceless in the outside world, it was already common to Yun Yang. Yun Yang, who had Emmy's support, naturally made a fuss about the quality of the honey. Actually, the honey of the queen bee was just an ordinary item that Yun Yang had casually given away. Above it was the amethyst queen bee's honey of a higher grade. That was the dream of amethyst honey, an unparalleled treasure. What? Amethyst queen bee's honey? Isn't that a premium item that is many times more precious than ordinary amethyst honey? Master, you can totally send this to the auction house. Letting us sell it like this is simply a reckless waste of a treasure. There's no need to go through so much trouble. Sending it to the auction house will only invite unnecessary trouble. How much is the price of your honey then? 20,000 Saint coins per bottle. Or, you can exchange it with treasures of equivalent value. Remember, only items of equivalent value can be exchanged. If the other party is a wise person, they will naturally give you something of equivalent value. Yin Yang quickly decided on the price. 20,000 for a small bottle of undiluted amethyst queen bee's honey could not be considered cheap. It should be said that it was free. If it was sent to the auction house, the starting bid alone would be at least 100,000 per bottle. However, Yin Yang's goal was not money. What he needed was to stir up a storm and use this premium amethyst queen bee's honey to test the waters. As expected, once the amethyst queen bee's honey was displayed, it immediately attracted a crowd of onlookers. It was even bought by a buyer who had some savings and a keen eye. After confirming it, the news spread like wildfire. Countless demons in the city gathered in this direction. This was especially so for the banshees, whose eyes were shining brightly without looking away. Other than the effect of nourishing a cultivator's meridians and bones, the amethyst honey also had another legendary miraculous effect. If consumed regularly, it could maintain one's youth forever. Eternal youth was an irresistible temptation to women, demonesses, and all female lifeforms in the world. 10 bottles of amethyst queen bee's honey were sold out very quickly, and they had only been sold to 3 stores. The first to get it was naturally the buyer who had a keen eye. However, she only had a keen eye and limited financial resources. Chapter 1249. Someone seemed to have called out, but the banshees did not seem to hear it, continuing to snatch the bottle in a frenzy. Mine, I was here first. I've already paid for it. Pfft, who didn't pay? This bottle is mine. Under the powerful temptation of eternal youth, even if the demon emperor and empress were here, these crazy banshees would turn a deaf ear to them, much less a mere castellan's wife. Seeing that they were being ignored, the castellan's wife panicked as well. Her group of demons were not young or old. Including her mistress and second mistress, there were 30 to 40 concubines. They were already short on resources. They had wanted to take advantage of their status, but the current situation was doomed to fail. The castellan's wife and her group of demons were afraid that they would not be able to get their hands on the bottle, so they charged forward with a loud bang. However, whether it was a coincidence or not, the last bottle had been snatched away by the banshees. At least for now, the castellan's wife and her group of demons were destined to return in disappointment. Facing the fiery gazes of the castellan's wives, White Bear stammered, "Gone, gone, really, gone." He was not stuttering, he was terrified. Anyone would shudder under the gazes of these women who looked like they wanted to pull out their tendons and skin them alive. How could White Bear be an exception? Gone? You've always had some, why are you gone now that we're here? Are you looking down on me? The castellan's wife's gaze was as sharp as a knife, her words piercing through his heart. That kind of extreme disappointment after the extreme surprise almost drove her crazy. Thanks to the crane's slender neck, she was already flushed red. One of her hands touched the hilt of the sword at her waist, seemingly unintentionally. If there's really nothing left, I'll chop you up. White Bear Bai's face was as white as a sheet. At this moment, his face was the same color as his fur. This time, it's really, really gone. White Bear Bai did not want to die. In his panic, he blurted out, "This was originally my master's, it's not mine. He only gave me this much, where's your master?" "My master is," a moment later. Yin Yang's room was filled with demons all over the place. Banshees. Yin Yang was not offended and remained calm. The Fox clan elder's face that he had morphed into was filled with an amiable smile. "Mistress, please do not be impatient." The city lord's wife said angrily, "Your disciples said that the amethyst queen bee honey is gone. How can I stay calm? Since I've come to Sky Crown City, why would I do such a stupid thing to offend the city lord's wife?" Yin Yang smiled faintly. "Those from before. Although it is the genuine amethyst queen bee honey, the quantity is limited, and it is only enough to satisfy our daily needs. As for Madam's portion, I have already prepared it. It will definitely satisfy Madam." The city lord's wife's eyes lit up. "Oh." Yin Yang chuckled and said, "Come to think of it, this old man was the one who planned this first. I have something to ask of you, but my demon knows my own situation and I really can't meet you." Unable to come up with a solution, I'm left with no choice but to resort to this. The city lord's wife was also an expert of the Crane clan. A glint flashed across her eyes when she heard Yun Yang's words. She said, "This. Brother Z of the Fox clan, please speak your mind," a concubine beside her asked. "May I ask Brother Z, how much amethyst queen bee honey do you have left?" Once the question was asked, all the women in the residence of the city lord's breathing quickened. No one was an exception. If it was only given to the mistress and not to us, it would be a great loss. The mistress would then enjoy all the glory and favor, and there would be no more for us. How could Yun Yang not understand this? He said leisurely, "Of course I still have," before his voice trailed off. With a wave of his hand, rows of small jade bottles appeared on the table. Yun Yang continued, "I still have 500 bottles here. I believe it should be enough for all of you ladies." However, no one bothered with him now. All the ladies, including the city lord's wife, stared straight at the neat rows of small bottles on the table. Their eyes glowed brightly, like arrows and swords, unblinkingly. A thin Crane clan expert stepped forward and opened a few bottles to check. He nodded slightly and said, "That's right, they're really the highest grade of amethyst honey. It's not an exaggeration to call them queen bee honey." Amethyst honey was already a rare item that had a price but no supply. The amethyst queen bee honey that Yun Yang had taken out this time was a high-grade item that had never been seen before. However, be it the smell or the feel, it was a few times better than ordinary amethyst honey. It was obvious that it was not fake at all. After receiving the confirmation, the demonesses became even more frenzied. Oh my God! Legend had it that amethyst honey could already preserve one's youth. Then, would the amethyst queen bee honey, which was even more exquisite, be even better? Such an exquisite item must not be missed. Once it was missed, one would regret it for the rest of their lives. Only the city lord's wife was still trying her best to maintain her elegance and calmness. However, her hands that had already turned white from clenching her fists and her face that was flushed with excitement had already betrayed her. She tried her best to be reserved as she said, "I wonder, what request does Sir have? You can tell me." The meaning was clear, "With this amethyst queen bee honey, I will do anything for you." Yun Yang smiled. "It's not a big deal. Firstly, this old man is getting on in years and feels that there's no hope for a breakthrough." "I want to obtain a longevity pill," the city lord's wife interrupted. "That's not a problem." A trivial longevity extending pill was worth at most 100,000 Saint Origin coins. It might be difficult for others to obtain one, but for someone with the status of the city lord's wife, a single word from her was not even worth mentioning. Cough cough, it's second, but it's also the thing that worries me the most for the rest of my life. I would like to request an audience with the city lord. I need your help with that matter. I don't know what you're looking for. Why don't you tell me? Or perhaps there's no need to trouble the city lord? Yun Yang wore a troubled expression as he turned to look at the crowd. The city lord's wife understood. "You may leave." The demons retreated from the room. "It's really, this old man's cultivation has regressed instead of improving because of my chronic illness all these years. Although I've tried everything I can think of, the results are minimal. The amethyst honey that I obtained by a narrow escape from death was also my cure, but it's a pity that this divine item is still useless. However, a few years ago, I came across a secret manual by chance. There's a method in it that can solve my chronic illness. It's to use some human cultivators as cultivation vessels and extract their bloodline and cultivation essence. In short, it's to use the Bound of Universe's cultivation method as a reference to break through the inherent bottleneck, allowing one's body to be reborn and climb to new heights. However, this old man is getting on in years now. I can't go to the Bound of Universe to plunder people. Remember the mobile version of the website, Chapter 360, a favor, page 1/1, bookmark for easier reading. Chapter 1250. Yin Yang's voice was full of emotion. I've thought about it, and to complete this arcane skill, I can only rely on external forces to enter the Bound of Universe. The risk is immense, and it's impossible if there's no great reward. Fortunately, the amethyst queen bee honey in my hands is still useful. It's not in vain that I risked my life to charge into the Amethyst Valley alone, to steal the amethyst honey. I've also heard that Lord Crane King is upright and courageous, and that you're righteous and righteous. He found it difficult to speak. Madam, this matter, the castellan's wife frowned. This matter was indeed of great importance, and the risk was immense. She was not sure if she could make the decision. Sir's request is not unreasonable. The amethyst honey is already a priceless item, and the amethyst queen bee honey is even more valuable. The human race is our race's nemesis, so we can deal with it however we want. The only thing to consider is the origin of the human cultivators. Even I don't know if Sir has any human martial artists with you, nor do I know if he's willing to help you. Yun Yang sighed and said, this old man's only chance to live. Yun Yang's words were faint, but the meaning behind them was clear to everyone. It was not a big deal unless he died. He was able to obtain the amethyst queen bee honey that others could not because he had a request. If he was not given a chance to live, why would he give the honey to him? Whether it was using force, emotion, or reason, it was useless in front of someone who did not have much time left in his life. The castellan's wife turned to look at the rows of sparkling amethyst honey. She bit her lip and said, Sir, I can promise to give Sir a longevity pill. I hope you can buy Sir's amethyst honey at 20,000 per bottle, no, 50,000 per bottle. How about that? Yin Yang said with a frown, nothing much. The amethyst queen bee honey I have with me is all that's left of me. I don't plan to sell it anymore. This is related to my survival, how can I sell it just like that? But you had so much before, didn't you sell them all? Sir, are you looking down on me by favoring one and discriminating against the other? It's precisely because the Grand Madam has taken notice of me, that's why I resorted to such underhanded tricks. The Madam is not an ordinary demon, and it's not easy to see her. If I want to see the Madam, I naturally have to resort to extreme measures. If the Madam doesn't come, I will continue to sell. Yin Yang sighed, now that I've seen Madam, I won't even sell a single bottle. The mayor's wife's almond-shaped eyes widened. You. Actually, the amethyst honey's claim of eternal youth is just a legend. It might not have such an effect. Yin Yang replied calmly, perhaps it's just a big lie that's been passed down. Why don't you wait for a few days, my lady? Let's see if there are any practical effects on the demonesses who have consumed the amethyst queen bee's honey. It's not too late then. I won't sell any of these bottles anymore. I'll keep them for you, madam. Is that okay? Yin Yang smiled and kept all the amethyst honey with a wave of his hand. In an instant, the table was completely clean. There was not a single bottle left. You! How dare you! The city lord's wife flew into a rage. Her face was filled with anger, and her killing intent was revealed. This old man doesn't have long to live. I've become indifferent to the suppression of martial arts in this world. Yin Yang said indifferently, Madam, please calm down. If Madam is really troubled, this old man probably won't have the next chance to act presumptuously. Since there are no demons to help me, why should I help them? Forgive me, forgive me. The city lord's wife was trembling with anger, but she could not do anything to the other party at the moment. The other party had already made his stance clear. I guess I won't be able to live much longer. If you're not willing to help, then you really won't be able to live much longer. The rest is up to you. Let's go. The city lord's wife's eyes glinted fiercely as she left with a flick of her sleeves. Then, sighs and curses could be heard coming from outside. What is this? Refusing a toast only to drink a forfeit. Humph. Yin Yang watched the city lord's wife leave, his eyes flickering. It looked like this deal was probably off. Would the other party snatch it from him? Master, don't panic. I have my own plans. Tonight, no matter what happens, don't show yourselves. All of you, sleep well. If you make any rash moves, you'll die in vain. Yes, this disciple understands. Before nightfall, spread the news that the city lord's wife left in a rage because she didn't manage to buy the amethyst honey. Try to spread it to all the demons. Yes, this disciple understands. I'll go now. White Bear and the other bears were not really fools. How could they not see the situation clearly? The amethyst queen bee honey in their master's hands was something the city lord's wife had to obtain, but the city lord's wife could not give the conditions their master had requested. There would definitely be some twists and turns in the future. Their master's cultivation base was profound and he did not have much time left to live, so there was no need for him to be cautious. His actions were aimed at saving his brothers' lives. The more demons knew about this, the safer they and the other bears would be. Yin Yang, on the other hand, cursed inwardly, what's wrong with these bears' brains? They think too much. Humans and demons walk different paths, it's a matter of perspective. Although this young master has taken you in because of the circumstances, it's only for expediency. I've never truly treated you as my disciples. Who would consider so much for you? That night, wave after wave of nightwalkers arrived as scheduled, appearing in the inn one after another. Wave after wave of tyrannical divine senses surged back and forth in the inn. A high-level fox cultivator around the 4th grade of Saint Emperor. This was the target. He looks like an old man with a slightly hunched back appearance. The amethyst queen bee honey on the target's body is extremely important. It must not be destroyed. Not even a bottle is allowed. Countless great demons flew around and almost dug up the entire inn. They even checked the bottom of every bed carefully, but they didn't find anything. As for the amethyst queen bee honey, the absolute target, it was nowhere to be found. Only the snores of the bears in White Bear's room were earth-shattering, and the entire inn was shaking along with their snores. Where did it go? Where's the fox tribe? What's going on? Come, let me tell you. On a certain rooftop, a group of Saint Emperor and Saint Venerable demons were in a state of confusion in the night. They had actually mobilized such a large force just to steal a few bottles of honey. At the same time, a massive manhunt was launched in the city. Their targets were the demonesses who had already bought the amethyst honey. It was a pity that White Bear had spread the news well. All the demonesses had received the news and understood that they had bought the honey, but the mayor's wife had not. Their superior was angry, so naturally, they were all on tenterhooks, living in fear. Some drank it in one gulp and then found a place to hide. Some even disappeared without a trace. No one knew where they went. There were also some who were more powerful. They had a Saint Venerable level demon lover by their side, so they were not afraid of a direct confrontation. Chapter 1251. As such, the city lord's wife busied herself for an entire night, but did not even manage to obtain a single bottle of purple crystal honey. She smashed the flower vase in the city lord's manor, furious. Search. Even if we have to dig 3 feet into the ground, we must find that old fox for me. They searched for 3 days straight. But this Fox clan expert seemed to have disappeared into thin air. Not even a trace of him could be found. This was strange. He was furious. Everyone else could maintain their looks forever, but we are the oldest in this city, yet we can't? In the end, the city lord could not stand his wife's crying and throwing a tantrum. He personally moved out and sealed off the entire area under his control, but it was to no avail. The only piece of good news that could be confirmed was that this Fox clan expert had not left the city. He was still in the city. The reason why he came to this conclusion was that every morning or noon, he could still be seen roaming around the city, eating or taking a stroll. But as soon as the demon clan experts who were searching for him rushed over, he would disappear again without a trace. Violet? The city lord was confused. When did a high-level expert called Violet appear in the Fox clan? Why haven't I heard of him before? If he really is only a 4th grade Saint Emperor, how could he have such a high level of concealment ability? This was obviously impossible. Then the other party's true strength must be considerable. And this also seemed to prove what he had said earlier. Because of the incident in the past, he had been heavily injured, his strength had been greatly reduced, and he did not have much lifespan left. But this kind of person was the hardest to deal with. On the fourth day, White Bear and the other 6 brothers were captured and brought into the city lord's manor. There was only a note left in the inn: "If you don't appear, I will kill your 7 disciples." That night, following a series of shattering sounds, the city lord's manor's entrance was suddenly filled with a fragrance. 7 bottles of purple crystal queen bee honey had been smashed at the entrance. The rich and elegant fragrance filled the air for tens of miles. Almost half the city was filled with this intoxicating fragrance. Apparently, Lord Violet wouldn't be threatened in the slightest. "You've captured 7 of my disciples to threaten me? I'll vent my anger by smashing my honey. Let's see who feels the pinch. If you catch 7, I'll smash 7 bottles." The city lord's wife's face was pale with heartache, but she still held on and did not give in. Until the next night. Although the city lord's mansion was heavily guarded, in a corner outside the walls of the city lord's mansion, there was still a series of sounds that sounded like hailstones falling. The banging sounds were incessant. The same sweet and fragrant scent once again permeated the entire city. This time, a total of 14 bottles of purple crystal honey were smashed here. Naturally, the effects were many times stronger than before. On the third day, there was almost no movement for the entire night. Just when the city lord's mansion was about to heave a sigh of relief, at the moment when dawn was about to break, the familiar banging sounds rang out one after another. This time, it was even more outrageous. He smashed 21 bottles in one go. The city lord's wife's entire body began to tremble. Half of it was because she was so angry that smoke was coming out of her 7 orifices. The other half was because her heart ached, and the pain was so painful that it pierced through her heart. The meaning of this Fox clan member named Violet was very clear: "You've caught 7 of my disciples. You want to force me to give in? That's impossible. For every day that you don't release the demon, I'll smash 7 bottles. 2 days, 14 bottles, 3 days, 21 bottles, and so on. As long as you don't release them, I'll keep smashing them. I don't believe that he'll be willing to smash them all. That's his life-saving straw. I won't release them." On the 4th day, the sound of 28 bottles of purple crystal honey smashing could be heard. On the 5th day, 35 bottles were smashed. On the 6th day, 42 bottles. On the 7th day, there were indeed no 49 bottles smashed. Instead, they rounded it up and smashed 50 bottles consecutively. In this way, they had already smashed 197 bottles of purple crystal queen bee honey. The city lord's wife could no longer sit still. It seemed like there were only 500 bottles that day. If they continued like this, wouldn't more than half of their stock be smashed by tomorrow? The day after tomorrow, the day after that, at most 3 to 5 days later, not a single bottle would be left. What I want is the purple crystal queen bee honey, not a lose-lose situation. Can't other people get their hands on purple crystal honey? The city lord's wife flew into a rage at the other extreme. The experts in the residence all smiled bitterly. Purple crystal honey was a top-grade item that had a price but no supply. It had already meant that it was not easy to obtain. If it was so easy to obtain, wouldn't it have been worthless a long time ago? Because of the environment in which the purple crystal bees lived, they were far more ferocious than other bee species. Every purple crystal bee was an existence that was almost indestructible. To be able to form a large swarm of purple crystal bees, at least hundreds of thousands of purple crystal bees had to be gathered together. Furthermore, the purple crystal queen bee honey that was a grade higher than ordinary purple crystal honey. Its value was at least 10 times that of ordinary purple crystal honey. The stinger of the purple crystal bees was incomparably sharp. It could almost ignore all defenses and any protective demonic aura. As long as they got close, even a Saint Venerable expert would be injured with just one stinger. Even the white bear race, which was famous for their rough skin and thick flesh, would not be able to escape. And once you were injured, congratulations, you would also be surrounded by the strangest and most special purple crystal bee venom. Ordinary bee venom could be dissolved by the honey of this bee species, but the purple crystal bee venom was very special. Although it would not kill you, it would always haunt you. At the very least, it would require 100 years of cultivation to be able to completely dissolve the bee venom. Therefore, even if it was a high-level Saint Venerable, it would not be easy for them to escape from the place where the amethyst bees gathered. Occasionally obtaining a bit of honey was even greater luck. Then why was the market price of such a rare purple crystal honey limited to being priceless, but not very high? This stemmed from the effects of the honey. The so-called eternal youth was only a legend. The effects had not been shown in front of people. The other effects were to nourish the meridians and repair the yuan body. The effects were indeed very strong, but there were many people who had the same type of heavenly treasure. Furthermore, it was much easier to collect them than the purple crystal honey. It was precisely because of this that although the purple crystal honey was rare, it was only rare. The market price was not high. In reality, even now, no one could understand how a mere Saint Emperor Fox clan could obtain so much purple crystal honey. And it was not even ordinary purple crystal honey, but purple crystal queen bee honey. What should we do? The city lord's wife was like an ant on a hot pan. Do we really have to give in to this hateful fox? On the other side, the city lord twisted his long neck and sighed speechlessly. Just for a few bottles of honey with unknown effects, the rules that he had set up with his own hands had been completely destroyed. This woman really made people speechless. What exactly does he want? The city lord asked speechlessly. What he wants is... The city lord's wife looked at her husband timidly. Hearing this, the city lord could not help but let out a long sigh. This matter was really difficult to handle. Chapter 1252. However, when he saw so many women staring at him in his backyard, the city lord was filled with anger, but he had nowhere to vent it. During this period of time, he was not the only one suffering from his wife's pillow talk. The entire backyard had been turned upside down because of the purple crystal honey. All the wives, concubines, and even his beloved maids and goddaughters, were all teary-eyed the moment they saw him. That purple crystal honey. Eternal youth, all of them stared at him, their eyes full of anticipation. The city lord felt as if he had committed a crime by not being able to get the honey. He kept lamenting about how he could not live on. I can't push him anymore. If I push him any further, he'll really fall to the ground. These were the words he heard the most these few days. You can't let Madame's temper do as she pleases. This is too important. Eternal youth, how could the city lord not have a headache? Eternal youth. Eternal youth. Could it be that all of you have been brainwashed by these 4 words? Agree to it. The city lord waved his sleeves angrily. Let those stupid bears out. Tell them that I personally spoke to Violet. Yes. Madame's eyes shone with a dazzling brilliance. She beamed with joy. My husband is the best. Really the best. The city lord covered his forehead and sighed. Damn it. If you don't agree, that Violet and the 7 bears will be fine, but I will be driven crazy by you all, damn it. The moment the white bears walked out of the city lord's prison, they felt as if they had just woken up from a dream. They had thought that it was over for them this time. There was no possibility of them walking out of the city lord's prison alive. What kind of demon was the city lord of Tianguan City? Even if he was not a hero, he was still one of the few great demons in the demon world. He had a high status and his cultivation was unimaginably high. Going against him head-on was no different from courting death. 3 simple words, they were dead meat. Unexpectedly, the bears, who had given up hope, not only did they not die after coming in, they did not even suffer much. They only stayed in the prison for a few days before being released. This was simply a dream. He wouldn't dare to do this even in his dreams. On the way back, the 7 bears felt like they were in a dream. They returned to the inn in a daze. They still felt weak all over, as if something was wrong. Inform Master. Master is not in the inn right now. That's right, where did Master go? After experiencing this unforeseen event, the mentality of all the bears changed once more. If it was said that they had suddenly encountered an expert before and didn't lack the thought of hugging his thigh, then right now, this thigh was too thick, and they couldn't hug it at all. They really didn't know if they should continue hugging it or let go. However, Yun Yang had appeared less than 2 hours after they had returned. You've suffered. If you have any questions about martial arts, you can ask me. There might not be such an opportunity in the future. I have some insights, let me share them with you. White Bear, White 7 Bear, was not bad. At least, during the few days that he was imprisoned, he did not say a word about his teacher. Yin Yang felt that even if they were demons, their perseverance was worthy of his respect. Yin Yang appeared in the city again that night. This time, he was having a meal in a small inn. Perhaps it was coincidence or a misfortune, he bumped into someone from the residence of the Castellan. Violet of the Fox clan? Yes, this old man. You've actually shown yourself? This old man knows that he's not guilty. Why wouldn't I dare to show myself? Even if I have precious treasures, I have the ability to protect myself. Why wouldn't I dare to show myself? Lord Castellan wishes to see you. Lord Castellan wishes to summon me, of course I dare not disobey. However, I don't know what it is that this old man is aware of, so that we don't lose our manners when we meet. Lord Castellan wishes to talk to you face to face about your conditions the other day. Hearing this, the inn burst into an uproar. Of course, Yin Yang was well aware of everything. The reason why he had to ask again in public was to confirm the matter further. This place was Crane King's hometown after all. Going back on his word in his own place, no matter how he made up for it, would still damage his family's reputation. Although the effect of this check and balance was subtle and might not be very effective, it was still good to have another hand. The residence of Castellan. In the parlor. There were only 2 people, facing each other from a distance. Crane King, Yun Yang. The tall and lanky Crane King sat on the throne, looking down at the old fox of the Fox clan in front of him. His scarlet eyes flashed with the anger that had been suppressed for a long time. This meeting was obviously one of coercion and the other of being coerced. The Crane King, who was used to being in a superior position and looking down on his subordinates, had not tasted the feeling of being coerced in a long time. But now, he had no choice but to do so. He was forced to submit. He had really been tricked by this old fox. As the king of a clan, how could he not be enraged when he was tricked by a lowly person? Are you that Violet or something? Crane King was a little emotional. Yes, this old man. Greetings, Your Highness Crane King. Long live Your Highness. Be it your cultivation base or intelligence, you're extraordinary. Why is it that this is the first time I've heard of your name? It's already a sin to insult the ears of a villager. If I were to investigate further, it'll only be an insult to the ancestors. Why bother asking? Violet, it's just a fake name, a smokescreen. Who are you? Crane King hollered. Yin Yang remained calm. Whether it's a real name or a fake one, it's just a codename in the end. This old and useless one is here today to discuss business with Your Highness, Crane King. What does it have to do with a codename? Your Highness's questioning is a little biased and neglecting the main point. Crane King leaned forward, a sharp aura pressing down on Yin Yang. Oh. Yin Yang took 2 steps back, a hint of paleness on his face. Your Highness Crane King, are you going to use force? A cruel smile hung on the corners of Crane King's lips. How about it? Do you think I dare or can't do it? Yin Yang took another 2 steps back and smiled faintly. This is not about Your Highness's courage. This old man has been fighting in his early years and is full of old wounds. My life is almost at its limit, and my time is only 3 to 5 years from now. I wonder if Your Highness Crane King can accept this. This old man has long accepted many things. Crane King narrowed his eyes. Oh. Your Highness is furious at this old man's previous actions. How could this old man not know this? However, entering the residence of Crane King this time, I've already prepared for the worst. Either I die here, ending all my troubles, or I receive your Highness Crane King's help to prolong my life. Whether it's the former or the latter, I'll have to leave it to fate, because this old man has done his best in demonic matters. If the Crane King has the intention to snatch it by force, I, the old fox, will definitely die here today. However, I will no longer be able to obtain your wife's amethyst queen bee honey. The old fox still has this bit of confidence. Yin Yang narrowed his eyes as well, not giving in. I can also guarantee that within the next 2,000 years, there will never be amethyst honey of this quality in the entire demon plane. Crane King's gaze grew dangerous. Are you threatening me? Do you think threatening me is the same as threatening those demonesses? Do you think that this king also cares about the so-called eternal youth? Threaten? Since Crane King thinks this is a threat, then just treat it as me threatening your Highness. This is my last hope. Whether your Highness Crane King cares or not, or whether you interpret it in any other way, it's none of my business. Crane King snorted coldly, calculating in his heart. He did not speak for a long time, and neither did Yin Yang. The situation seemed to have frozen. Whether you agree or not, it depends on your consideration. If you're willing to live in a restless house for the rest of your life and be constantly blamed, there's no harm in trying. I'm going to die anyway, why should I care about you? Chapter 1253. However, looking at His Highness Crane King, he really did not have the manly air of a man who could keep his word even in the backyard. Alright, your threat has succeeded, but I don't have the human cultivators that you want. You can give me a compromise. As long as it's not too much, I'll agree to it. As for the longevity pills, I can find a way to get you 5 of them. With your cultivation, with 5 longevity pills, you should be able to extend your lifespan by another 30 years. Crane King said after some consideration. Yin Yang nodded and stood up to salute with his hands cupped together. If so, I shall take my leave. He stood up to leave. Crane King was dumbfounded. CK, I've already lowered myself to this extent, but I didn't say anything definite. Do you have to be so straightforward? Behind the screen. A few female demons hidden behind the screen had their eyes wide and held their breaths, their eyes filled with reluctance and anxiety. Wait. Crane King spoke. Do you have any other instructions, Your Highness? I really don't have much time, I can't afford to waste it. Yin Yang looked like he was saying, don't call me if you don't have any human cultivators. The Crane King took 2 deep breaths and finally said in a low voice, you want the human cultivators to practice the mystic arts. This is a very important matter. Although I have what you need here, it is not mine. I am just a guard, and I am incapable of handling this matter. This matter is not as easy as you think, his voice was low. I'm telling you clearly, I can help you with what you want, but I'll have to take a huge risk. This risk is either offending the Crane King or the Demon Emperor. Once anything goes wrong, I'm afraid I won't even be able to protect myself. A few bottles of amethyst honey are far from enough. I've already said this, it's my sincerity. Don't force me to go to the extreme. Yin Yang was taken aback. He thought for a moment and said, to be honest, Crane King, I vaguely know that Crane King has some human cultivators in your hands through certain channels. That's why I came up with the idea of making this trip. The human race and my race are enemies, so it's not too much for us to manipulate them. Therefore, it shouldn't be too difficult for Crane King. However, from what Crane King has said just now, it seems that you have some ulterior motives. This old man has been presumptuous. However, this old man really needs human practitioners to prolong his life, and the only thing I can offer is the purple crystal honey. Although the purple crystal queen bee honey I gave to your wife is of the highest quality, I still have 2 bottles of purple crystal queen bee honey that I have in my private collection. I used it to prolong my life. I can give 1 bottle to Crane King as a reward for his help. He said softly, my amethyst queen bee honey is extraordinarily potent. Just a sip and you'll be able to maintain your youth forever. It can also heal injuries to your spirit and make up for the damage to your origin. In fact, if you drink it at a critical moment, you can use its medicinal power to break through the barrier of your cultivation base. I believe Your Highness Crane King knows about this. Crane King's eyes shone, but he asked suspiciously, since you have such an invaluable treasure, why do you need to seek further? Just use the amethyst queen bee honey to break through the barrier? Isn't this a waste of effort? Yin Yang chuckled dryly. Your Highness Crane King is at the pinnacle of this world. Why ask when you already know the answer? During the process of breakthrough, the danger is secondary. Just the burning of my life force alone is enough to make it difficult for me to survive. With the few years of life I have left, how can I bear to burn it? I'm afraid I'll burn myself to death before I can break through the barrier. The old fox needs at least 300 years of lifespan to be able to withstand the combustion of this breakthrough. This is also the biggest reason why most cultivators will find a place to wait for death when they reach the limit of their lifespan of 300 years. I've thought of countless arcane arts, but only this art of stripping the target's bloodline and soul to nourish myself can allow me to increase my life force in a short period of time, allowing me to have some form of success when I break through the barrier later. Just as Yun Yang finished speaking, he chuckled self-deprecatingly and shook his head, not saying another word. Crane King nodded slowly, but his expression grew increasingly solemn as he pondered. Violet's words were sincere, they should be from the bottom of his heart. More importantly, if it was the amethyst queen bee honey of a higher level, it would be worth it for him to make an exchange. Actually, the old fox was already biased in the current situation. If he had insisted on using the honey, Crane King would have agreed to it in the end. After all his women had gone crazy for the honey, and he was actually the one at a disadvantage. However, he had not expected this fellow to reveal his final trump card, the amethyst queen bee honey, in fear of failure. Although this was already a pleasant surprise, it would be even better if he could earn more from it. Based on this thought, the Crane King rolled his eyes and said, "You've said before that apart from you, no one else will be able to make the purple crystal honey appear in the world in 1,000 years. In that case, 1 bottle of royal honey is not enough. I need at least 5 bottles of royal honey. Otherwise, I suggest you find another way." Yin Yang stood up and left. "I only have 2 bottles here, or rather, less than 2 bottles. I've already taken 2 sips of the second bottle. I've already hung on by the skin of my teeth twice. Your Highness Crane King doesn't even have a drop more, let alone 5 bottles. Even with these 2 bottles, I can only give you 1 bottle. It's impossible to have more." Crane King chuckled and said, "2 bottles it is then. I don't care if it's 2 whole bottles." Yin Yang's wrinkled old fox head shook. No. If I give it all to you, even if I achieve my wish as a human cultivator, I won't be able to continue living without the amethyst queen bee honey that can save my life. King Crane's asking for an exorbitant price is too ruthless." Crane King sneered. "Do you think you still have room to negotiate? I insist, what are you going to do about it?" Yin Yang thought for a while and said resolutely, 1.5 bottles at most. I must keep half a bottle. If Crane King is still insistent, I can only take my leave. Or perhaps Crane King plans to go our separate ways and both sides will suffer? Behind the screen, the eyes of the demonesses were already red with rage. Going their separate ways and both sides suffering was something they would never allow to happen. They could not wait to rush out and grab Crane King by his neck to force him to agree. 1 bottle would do. 1 sip and you'll be young forever. That's more than enough. Why won't you agree? What are you hesitating for? You're driving me crazy with anxiety. Crane King could acutely feel the overwhelming resentment coming from behind the screen. He could not help trembling as he pretended to slap the table and stand up. Gritting his teeth, he said, "All right. 1.5 bottles it is then. Deal. If so, please hand over the amethyst Queen Bee Honey and Queen Bee Honey. Crane King said faintly, I won't go back on my word on what I've promised you. Forgive me, Your Highness Crane King. This old man has roamed the world, and what I don't believe in the most are oaths and promises. Yin Yang said neither humbly nor haughtily, I only believe in heaven's will. Humph. The Crane King snorted heavily. This old fox actually wants me to make an oath to heaven's will? Chapter 1254. The Heavenly Oath. In addition to ensuring that Crane King's promise is fulfilled, you must also ensure my safety in Sky Crown City. A thunderous roar, and the entire Sky Crown City trembled. The glory of the Heavenly Oath let the entire Sky Crown City know that the city governor seemed to have promised someone something. This was a big deal. Crane King's face turned green as he looked at the excited women rushing out from behind the screen after obtaining the purple crystal honey. He closed his eyes and panted heavily. Don't take the royal honey. Madam stepped forward. This is what we need to save our lives in the future. As for the rest. Looking at the 303 bottles of purple crystal honey on the table, Madam's heart felt like it was bleeding. There were originally 500 bottles. If she had known that she would have to agree to the conditions sooner or later, why did she drag it out for a few days? She used this trick and that, and in the end, she lost 197 bottles for nothing. The pain was indescribable. 197 bottles. They were all mine. Everyone take 3 bottles first. The rest will be kept in the treasury, awaiting my husband's reward in the future. No demons are allowed to touch them, violators will be killed. Madam made the final decision. Although the other women were not happy, they could only obey Madam's authority. At least Madam did not intend to monopolize the majority, which was enough to comfort the demons. However, with each person taking 3 bottles, 150 bottles were gone, leaving only 153 bottles. Think about it, if you take them all, you will only drink them once. If you leave them, in case your looks are damaged in the future, or there's still a chance to make up for it. Madam's words made the female demons understand a lot. This was really a good thing to say. Thank you for your advice, Madam. Let's go. Looking at the Madam leaving with the honey, Crane King let out a long sigh. Why? Why do I have to marry so many wives? This is what I deserve. Aren't they all beasts if they return to their original forms? Sigh. Violet, come with me. I'll help you fulfill my promise. Crane King stood up, his face extremely gloomy. Even though the Crane King had the upper hand in this deal, he still felt that he was not in control. Even though the gains were far beyond his expectations, he was still not satisfied. Thank you, Crane King. Yin Yang followed suit and left. Yin Yang followed the Crane King into an underground secret tunnel. Both of them executed their skills and sprinted down the secret tunnel, going at least dozens of miles down the tunnel. Yin Yang was surprised to find out that the environment and atmosphere around the secret tunnel was unusual. When he first entered, he was surrounded by soil. This was understandable, it would be strange if there was no soil in the tunnel. However, after a few thousand feet, the surroundings of the tunnel had turned into rocks. This was not unusual, it was still the norm. However, after a few thousand feet, the surroundings had turned into steel walls. This was a little unusual. But along the way, they passed through the iron mines, forming a certain scale of iron walls. Although it was illogical, it was still acceptable. But after a few hundred zhang, the walls were actually made of gold. This was completely illogical. After all, even if they passed through the iron mine and then the gold mine would never automatically form a gold wall. In the end, what caught his eye was a huge door that was completely made of amethyst. It shone brightly. Both of them came to the door. The Crane King stopped in his tracks. Let me make this clear. If any part of what is inside is leaked, you and I will both die a horrible death. The Crane King looked at Yun Yang and uttered each word clearly. Your Highness, please don't worry. I've spent so much time and effort just to survive. I won't dig my own grave and seek my own death. Yin Yang sighed. The Crane King smirked coldly. I hope you remember what you've said. As he spoke, he placed his hand on the door. A surge of demonic chi burst forth and the power of his soul surged at the same time. The amethyst door glowed with colorful lights. Then, the amethyst door slowly opened and a thick, rich demonic chi gushed out. Yin Yang was not a real demon after all, so he was instinctively resistant to the sudden surge of demonic chi. However, he still had to put on a look of pleasant surprise. He opened his mouth wide and sucked in a deep breath, the billowing demonic chi entering his mouth in a single gulp. Yin Yang's expression was naturally one of extreme delight, but the moment the demonic chi entered his mouth, it had already been transferred into his deific consciousness space, as if he had stolen the sky and changed the sun. Similarly, the Crane King was also instinctively inhaling and exhaling, but he was obviously more restrained. After a few breaths, he stopped Yin Yang and said, "Stop inhaling." Yin Yang looked at the Crane King reluctantly and stopped. This is the demonic chi of my entire tribe. It doesn't belong to you alone. The deal between us is not here. The Crane King said faintly, "Come in with me. Don't cause unnecessary trouble." Yin Yang followed the Crane King inside. The amethyst door behind him closed slowly, cutting off the deific consciousness connection outside the cave. It was like they were in two different worlds. After passing through 7 doors, even with Yin Yang's experience, he could not help but be amazed by what he saw. It was hard to imagine what kind of manpower and resources would be needed to build such a huge project in the barren land of the demon race. This place had to be at least tens of thousands of feet underground. Indeed, all the way from the amethyst door was a gentle slope that extended downwards. There were 7 doors in front and behind him. The level of defense was already at its extreme. Since there was a powerful deific consciousness probing, one could only pass through 2 or 3 doors at most. However, there were a total of 7 doors here. When they came to the last door, 2 royal Saint Pinnacled demonic cranes stopped the Crane King. "My king, where do you want to go? Come down to check on the progress." "Who is this fox?" "It's a special envoy sent by the royalty." "Please." Yin Yang was speechless. A king of his own race was entering, yet they were obstructing the examination. No wonder the Crane King had been so reluctant when he had proposed the terms. It turned out that it was not an easy task at all. The door opened under the control of the 2 demonic cranes and the Crane King led Yin Yang in again. What appeared in front of him was an empty field that was at least 1,000 feet tall. Countless towering pillars glowed with mysterious patterns, holding up the sky. The countless pearls that adorned it illuminated an area of several tens of thousands of meters, making it even clearer and more transparent than the sky and the sun. As Yin Yang looked around, he could see countless small houses standing in the middle of the field. There were also many children running around playing or cultivating. There were also children who were fighting with weapons. Further away, there were also people training and battling, but their opponents were all adults. There were both men and women. Around the small houses, there were many railings on which clothes and bedding were hung, adding to the atmosphere of life. Just by looking at it, there were at least tens of thousands of people living here. Were these humans? Could they be the cultivators from the bound of universe that had been captured all these years? Why were there so many of them? Chapter 1255. Yin Yang's pupils shrank abruptly. The scale of the number of people in front of him was almost the entire population of a small human town. Moreover, the entire town was filled with cultivators and profounders. Furthermore, there were many human martial artists here, building families, raising children, and reproducing. What was this situation? It was thought-provoking, yet inconceivable at the same time. Although Yin Yang was extraordinarily intelligent and had always thought of things that others could not, he was still bewildered as his thoughts raced. He was stunned on the spot. Had the demon race abducted these people just to keep them in captivity? Was this not a little too comfortable? Or perhaps, there was a greater conspiracy behind all of this? Beside him, the Crane King's eerie voice rang out, "Violet. I'm not interested to know if you're the real Violet or a fake name. I don't care, this has nothing to do with the grand scheme of things. You've been stubborn and wanted to borrow my power to collect humans to restore your original state. This is true, but there must be some other reason behind it. You've probably learned about the things before you through some channel, but it's still shocking to see it with your own eyes. It's completely different from your original expectations. I've done what I've promised you. Everything you need is in front of you. You can stay here and collect them yourself. No one will stop you, or rather, no one can stop you." Yin Yang was taken aback and asked, "Crane King, what do you mean?" The Crane King said eerily, "Don't you know what I'm talking about? I've made a heaven's vow, so of course, I'll make sure that your wish is fulfilled. I'll give you enough human martial artists for you to study and use. There are more than 90,000 human martial artists here, it should be enough for you. Secondly, I've also promised to ensure your safety in Sky Crown City." This is absolutely true. Although this place has already left the boundary of Sky Crown City, there is no one who can kill you here. Just relax. The Crane King smiled sinisterly. "Lastly, I wish you good luck." As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and left. Yin Yang hollered, "You're leaving now? Even if I succeed and recover from my injuries, how am I going to get out? That's your problem. In my oath, I only promised to ensure your safety, but it didn't include bringing you back." Just as Crane King's voice trailed off, he was already by the door. Yin Yang pounced on him furiously. Crane King snorted, "Go back." A back kick landed on Yin Yang's chest, sending him flying away. It was at this moment that the last door closed tightly. The Crane King's figure disappeared from this space. Another voice rang in Yin Yang's ears, "I've already made it clear that this realm is no longer within Sky Crown City's boundaries, yet you still dare to be so arrogant in front of me. You're seeking your own death, what do you have to do with others?" Outside the door, the Crane King, who had mocked them, did not leave. Instead, he stood by the door and listened attentively. However, he could hear the sounds of the door being attacked repeatedly. The corner of his mouth curled into a cold smile as he walked away with his hands behind his back. Saint Emperor? Even a peak holy venerable would not be able to break through the restrictions personally set up by the Crane Sovereign. Old fox, just wait for your death inside. Maybe 10 years, maybe 8 years later, when you've reached the end of your life, I'll come and collect your corpse. The Crane King guffawed, feeling that all the frustration he had accumulated over the past few days had finally been vented out. Seeing that the Crane King had disappeared, Yin Yang removed his demonic form at once and reverted to his human form. Then, he summoned his strongest combat power and attacked the door and the barrier in a frenzied manner. However, he only managed to attack a few dozen times before he stopped. There was only a faint smile on Yin Yang's lips. He did not feel the slightest bit disappointed that he had been tricked by the other party. What I wanted was to enter such a place. When I know the truth, I don't believe that there's still a large space in this world that can seal me away, with my ability to transform. Do you think you're the gods of the universe? After the commotion earlier, especially when Yin Yang had attacked with all his might, the people inside had naturally noticed Yin Yang's presence and were looking in his direction. Seeing a human youth attacking the door, they were all stunned. A moment later, a few silhouettes flew over and landed in front of Yin Yang. The newcomers were a few elderly people, all of them looking at Yin Yang warily. "You are?" Yin Yang looked back at them blankly. "You are?" The few of them looked pained. "Young brother, were you captured by the demonic race as well?" Yin Yang sighed. "It's a long story." A muscular man asked doubtfully, "Why is it only you this time?" Yin Yang replied blankly, "So what if it's only me? Is there anything wrong with that? In the past, at least hundreds, thousands or even tens of thousands were brought in at one go. There's never been a situation where one person is alone. The group was extremely puzzled. As for Yun Yang, he had extended his deific consciousness during this initial contact and probed these people. They were indeed all humans. Not a single one of the demon race was hidden among them. There seemed to be some unknown energy in this space that was suppressing the demonic power of the demonic race, causing the demonic aura that was constantly produced from the void to be pushed out as much as possible. The demonic aura that Yun Yang had inhaled at the door had actually been expelled from here. Are they all humans here? Yun Yang asked. The elder sighed. Yes, they are all humans. They are all humans who were captured by the demonic race. He looked at Yun Yang with pity. It's a pity that you came here at such a young age. I'm afraid that your children and grandchildren will have to stay here and endure the baptism of time. Sigh. Are there any demonic race here? No, the demonic race can't survive here. Why? Because they want to ensure the integrity of the souls of the humans who live here. Once the demonic race enters, both sides will definitely fight each other, thus creating the most extreme atmosphere of killing. After all, even if they don't kill us, we will kill them. Therefore, there will be no demonic race or demonic beast here. Oh, Yin Yang's expression turned indifferent as he looked at the people in front of him. He suddenly asked, does this mean that everyone here is simply confined? Their movements and cultivation base aren't actually restricted or restrained? The elder at the front said, how can there be no restrictions at all? But the restrictions are rather different. 99% of the people here will enjoy the rest of their lives. It's rare for them to die a violent death. No violent death. Yun Yang repeated the two words and said, you have all lived here for a long time, but the demonic race purposely built such a place. What is their real purpose? It can't be for the people they captured to enjoy the rest of their lives here, can it? The group looked at each other. No one answered for a long while. Sigh, this question has also trapped us for countless years, but we still don't know the demonic race's intention, an elder answered with difficulty. Chapter 1256. Yin Yang asked, don't you have any guesses? How can there be no guesses? There's no need to guess at all. The demon race has set up such a grand scene, expending so much demonic energy and material resources, as well as so much time. They must be planning something big. It's most likely related to the demon race's invasion of the bound of universe. Everyone has guessed this since a long time ago. One of the middle-aged men said, however, after so many years, everyone's situation has remained the same. Perhaps this is an indirect proof that the demon race's original intention has not succeeded. The others were smiling as well, their smiles filled with relief and joy. Yin Yang, on the other hand, sighed softly. Did not succeed? How do you all know that the demon race did not succeed? Just like what the people before him had said, the demon race had already expended a great deal of resources to maintain the living conditions of these imprisoned people. If they did not reap a considerable amount of benefits, they would have long ended this inexplicable plan. Then are you all really going to live peacefully here and enjoy the rest of your lives? Yin Yang asked coldly. Everyone was instantly speechless when they heard this, and many of them revealed embarrassed expressions. Why do you have so many questions? The muscular middle-aged man spoke after a while. We don't want to stay in this foreign land for long, but what can we do if we don't live here? We're just fish on the chopping block now, we can't go anywhere else even if we want to. It's inevitable that everyone wants to escape when they first come in. We all have the same thought. The elder was rather open-minded. Young man, there will be a time when your belly full of questions will be answered. However, stay here first. There'll be plenty of time for you to understand the matters of this land in the future. Under these people's arrangements, Yun Yang was successfully allocated a small wooden house. Although there were only 2 rooms, one for sleeping and the other for entertaining guests, it was more than enough. Yun Yang had already investigated that the highest cultivation base among the humans here was only at the pinnacle of the Saint King level. Naturally, no one had noticed Yun Yang's actual strength and did not pay much attention to his arrival. Similarly, Yun Yang did not care about their attitudes. After sitting quietly in the room for a while, Yun Yang could not help feeling a little exasperated. The two rooms were great, one was a more private bedroom and the other was a living room, but how could he have any guests in this land? However, after a day and a half, Yun Yang began to treat them again. Yun Yang quickly gained a general understanding of the people in the area and made a list of the 10 people with the highest cultivation base, 10 people with the best popularity, and a few people with the highest prestige. Then, he began to treat them to a meal with a clear goal in mind. Yun Yang's interspatial zone had never been lacking in heaven and earth treasures, especially after the incident in Tian Fa Holy Land and during his time in the demonic realm. He had also plundered some resources, so it was not difficult for him to treat them now. When it came to treating, basically all the people on the list came. Not only did they come themselves, but they also brought their families. Those with families brought their wives and children. Yun Yang was not offended at all. He readily prepared some children's toys and good food and went on a long walk. Obviously, Yun Yang's treat this time was to be perfect, so that it would be easier for him to carry out his next move when everyone was in a mess. Yun Yang was rather surprised by the situation inside. At the very least, it was completely different from the prison situation that he had imagined it to be. Everything that he saw was like the demon race had specially built a paradise and brought these humans here to settle down and take care of them for the rest of their lives. Would the demon race be so kind? Or perhaps, what goal did they want to achieve by doing this? On the same night, the area in front of Yun Yang's small house was bustling with activity. Countless children were running around with the candies that Yun Yang had given out. There were also women who were picking out accessories or dresses that they could wear. From Yun Yang's point of view, it was like going to a market. What was more, Yun Yang could not see much sorrow in the men, women, old, and young. Basically, everyone looked calm and peaceful. It was as if they had been living here for a long time and had accepted their fate. Even if they did not accept their fate, it would only be more painful. There was no other way. After a night of chatting, Yun Yang finally understood a lot of things. The demon race had abducted many young human disciples here. Other than the requirement of quantity, there was also a further requirement. There had to be a balance of men and women. The ratio could not be out of balance. Other than the discomfort of the bumpy road, those who were abducted were completely free once they arrived here. They could continue their cultivation journey here, although the effect was not great. They could also find a woman they liked here, build a family, raise children, and live a peaceful life. Food and necessities were all available, even more complete than what Yun Yang had brought. There was a separate spot on the north side of the residential area that only the demon race was allowed to enter. Every once in a while, the demon race would come in and collect all the trash that the humans had abandoned there. At the same time, they would bring in a massive amount of resources to supply the humans' daily needs. Even when they met the humans occasionally, they did not offend each other, staying out of each other's way and minding their own business. This treatment, at least in Yun Yang's opinion, was incredible. It was simply incredible. He did not have to do anything and no one cared if he created trash as he pleased. There were demons to clean it up and there was an almost continuous supply of new resources. What kind of treatment was this? The living environment was clean and tidy almost all the time. Other than the slightly smaller space where one could move around and could not roam freely like in the bound of universe, it was a peaceful nest in every other aspect. There was no need to worry about getting rich, supporting a wife and children, or having no friends. There was no need to worry about anything. If one wanted to play chess, one could always find a chess partner who could be considered a match among tens of thousands of people. If one wanted to drink, one could go up and shout and many would answer. Even if one got drunk and started a fight on the street, no one would actually die from it. After so many years of imprisonment, there were less than 10 cases of accidental deaths, and they were all caused by affairs such as adultery. As for the demon race's mystical beasts, they had never appeared here. All of you should know that the demon race's resources are scarce. Countless of their people are still living on the edge of life and death. How can they provide you with living conditions and quality of life so limitlessly and unconditionally? There must be something fishy here. Yin Yang looked at these people with a frown. Haven't any of you investigated? Of course I have. Basically, every newcomer has spent a lot of time and effort to investigate those who have not given up on leaving this realm. Unfortunately, no one has been able to find any useful information. In the end, they could only leave it be. An elder who sat at the guest seat said seriously, "Besides, this old man can also guarantee one thing. Although we've been imprisoned here for so many years, we've never done anything that's unworthy of our human mentality. We haven't even imparted our cultivation methods. The demon race is our nemesis. Before this righteousness, we can always be sure. The first thing we teach every child when they are born is that they are a human, not a demon. One day, they will return to the human world and breathe in the spiritual atmosphere that belongs to the human race. Return. From the beginning to the end, it has always been our life goal, and it will never change. In fact, we've always been waiting for the human masters to rescue us, or waiting for the day the demon race is annihilated by the human race, or the day we can break out of this place. As long as we can escape, even if we have to perish together with the demon race, our lives will not be in vain. Therefore, although the people here know that it's hard to improve in cultivation, they still cultivate diligently after considering the possibility of their realm slipping. Of course, there are some who have no future and come here to eat and wait for death, but it's only a small portion of them. The others echoed in agreement, drinking and reminiscing about the times they had spent outside. Not long after, tears streamed down their cheeks. There really aren't any signs? Yin Yang was extremely puzzled. Then why does the demon race keep so many people? When this old man first came, I've thought that if the demon race uses my life to harm the bound of universe, then I'll commit suicide immediately to avoid a lifetime of regret, the elder chuckled bitterly. But, from the beginning to the end, there's not even a scene of me being forced. Me too. Similar voices came one after another, one after another. Yin Yang could not help feeling a headache coming on. Can I take a look at your bodies? Or the state of your cultivation base? Or even your meridians? The elder looked at him quietly and said, "Go ahead if you want to. We've checked each other more than 1,000 times over the years." Sigh. Young man, how old are you this year? Don't you have a wife outside? Another person said, "Even if you have a wife, it's useless now. Look at how handsome this young man is. Let's discuss and see if there's a suitable girl who hasn't married yet in any family. There are quite a lot of them, but with his looks, he'll be snatched away like crazy." Everyone began to ponder about this matter. Yin Yang did not know whether to laugh or cry, but he did not slack off. He began to check everyone's bodies, divine senses, and divine souls. However, after a long time, he found nothing. Everything was normal. You should all be the best of the best. Many of you are from sects with celestial luck banners, right? Can you force each of your celestial luck banners out for me to see? Yin Yang asked. Everyone was indifferent to this. They had nothing to do anyway, so they might as well play with this kid. What if he really found out something was amiss? Many of them began to cultivate, and the shadows of the celestial luck banners appeared one after another, each with their own chi. Chapter 1257. Yin Yang carefully observed the celestial luck banners in the sky. As far as he could see, the chi of each celestial luck banner was in an illusory state, but he could still see the name of the school it belonged to. There seemed to be nothing unusual. Everyone lifted their heads and looked at the celestial luck banners, lost in thought for a while. To this day, we can only look at each other's celestial luck banners to recall the past of our hometown. The celestial luck banner fluttered in the sky, but everyone's gaze wandered along with the banner. The atmosphere around them was filled with nostalgia and memories, and many people were shedding tears because of it. Could they never go back to their hometown again? The soft sigh sounded like sleep talk, appearing inexplicably, but it was a trembling sound that broke everyone's heart. Cheers! Everyone raised their cups together, mixing their homesickness and tears into the wine, and downed it in one gulp, intending to get drunk and forget all their worries. It was a pity that the wine had entered their hearts, making them even more depressed. Only Yun Yang's state of mind was not affected by this melancholy. He was still carefully studying the celestial luck banners. As he stared at them again and again, he vaguely felt that something was wrong, but there was nothing unusual about the celestial luck banner as it floated back and forth. The celestial luck banner was closely related to its owner. Although it was difficult for the cultivation base of the people in front of him to reach the peak, there was no hindrance in other aspects. He was not willing to give up just like that. He pondered hard, hoping that he could gain enlightenment from the vague feeling just now and break the stalemate. After a while, everyone began to retrieve the celestial luck banner. Actually, everyone knew that although Xing Xing spoke with certainty, vehemently, and tried her best to motivate people, she had just been captured and had not yet accepted it psychologically. Therefore, it was expected that she would not be able to see through it. This kind of emotion and mentality. All the humans who had just arrived here, without exception, felt that they were different and could definitely be the main characters who could break the stalemate. However, how could it be so easy to be the main character? Wait! Yin Yang stood up abruptly. Take it back slowly. He pointed at everyone's celestial luck banner and said word by word, look at each other carefully. Is your celestial luck banner missing a corner? Missing a corner? When the crowd heard that, they could not help but feel puzzled. Following his words, they stared at the celestial luck banner phantom of the person beside them and immediately exclaimed, it seems like there are some defects, but I'm not sure yet. They had been here all year round, often forcing out the celestial luck banners to reminisce. But for a long time, he didn't seem to notice any abnormalities. It was as if it had been like this from the beginning, and he had gotten used to it, thinking that he had surpassed it. If I'm not wrong, the loss of the celestial luck banner is a negative effect caused by the accumulation of years. Yin Yang said slowly, a year may be just a little bit less, a tiny bit, so little that you won't even notice it. As he spoke, he slowly revealed his celestial luck banner. The words Residents of Nine Supremes fluttered in the wind and loomed before everyone's eyes. Everyone was surprised to find that the celestial luck banner displayed by Yun Yang was flawless. In that instant, everyone felt as if they were struck by lightning. When they looked at their own celestial luck banner, they did not know what went wrong for a moment. But when they compared it with the new celestial luck banner, they could immediately see the difference. The other party's celestial luck banner was intact and solemn. This was the true elegance and aura of the celestial luck banner. On the other hand, their celestial luck banner was not only missing a small corner, but even its color and aura were much dimmer. It was as if the original color had been worn away by the long days of idleness. Why is it like this? The leading old man was at a loss and asked involuntarily. He looked at the others and saw that they were also at a loss and bewilderment. No one spoke for a long time. The room fell into absolute silence in an instant, so quiet that a pin drop could be heard. It was the most striking contrast to the noises coming from outside, where there were women's voices and children's laughter. However, the crowd just listened, dumbfounded. They even felt that the voices of their family members outside were so far away. They were clearly right beside their ears, but they felt that the voices came from beyond the sky and were out of place. Because right now, everyone felt a chill, and a chill that penetrated into their hearts. Even their thoughts seemed to be frozen at this moment. The more than 20 people gathered here were all from sects that owned celestial luck banners. Naturally, they were the best of the best, and their intelligence was far beyond that of ordinary people. As they came to a realization, they turned their stiff necks and looked at Yun Yang. What? What's going on? Their eyes shone with extreme fear. Could it be? Yun Yang heaved a heavy sigh. The other party has used some kind of method to obtain the celestial luck banner in your bodies and form it into another special energy. This is the most likely direction of the current situation, Looking at the ashen faces of the people in front of him, Yin-Yang suddenly could not bear to continue. You were plundered by the demon clan and forced to live here. It's true that you have no choice. Everyone is even very proud that we have not betrayed humanity and are still upholding the bottom line. But in fact, you may have already caused some kind of harm to the human world. Once the bottom line of everyone's psychological bottom line was crossed, how could they prevent their state of mind from collapsing instantly? This would be a cruel but unavoidable topic. We really haven't done anything. The elder stood up abruptly, his eyes filled with fear but also determination. We haven't done anything to harm humanity. We don't even know why the celestial luck banner is missing a corner. We've done nothing for so long. He seemed to be explaining, but not to Yin-Yang, but to himself. Just as Yin-Yang was thinking, this was already the spiritual pillar that they were relying on here. If this belief crumbled, they would not be able to survive. Why is it missing a corner? Why is it dimming? More than 20 people racked their brains. The answer was already in their hearts, but they still hoped for the slightest possibility. The top priority now is to find out the source of this matter. What special facilities are there here? Yin-Yang asked. Since there had been a change, there must be a reason for it. Yin-Yang felt that if his guess was right, perhaps the passage that the Holy Land of Divine Punishment had opened 30 years in advance was because of this. Following these people around, Yin-Yang scanned through the entire area. Soon, his gaze locked onto a spot that was especially clean. It was a long row of green plants that had been transplanted here. They were neither tall nor sturdy, only about 100 feet tall at most. They had a huge canopy similar to a weeping willow, full of gentleness. What caught Yin-Yang's attention was the long row of trees arranged in the north. The huge canopies above them formed a private space that was difficult to see through. Chapter 1258. It had to be said that this was an extremely beautiful scenery in the area. Anyone who saw it would inevitably be immersed in it, forgetting to leave. As far as the eye could see, the lush greenery was dreamy and dreamy. Even the air was soothing, almost fulfilling all of humanity's desires for scenery. Yin-Yang's heart skipped a beat. Focusing his gaze, he saw that the long branches of the shade hung down softly. As the breeze blew, the hundreds of millions of branches swayed gently with the wind. Countless soft green leaves swayed with the movement as a faint, elegant fragrance permeated the air. The fragrance was almost indiscernible. If one was not especially sensitive or someone who paid special attention like Yin-Yang, they would not be able to smell it at all. It was a comforting feeling that seeped into one's heart, making one unable to stop and forgetting to leave. Those who smelled it would probably be more intoxicated than those who did not smell it. Furthermore, as the branches swayed gently, bits and pieces of starlight slowly floated and swayed in the air. The faint light that could only be seen with the naked eye disappeared as soon as it entered one's field of vision. It was a marvelous sight indeed. Countless glimmers of light and darkness formed this mystical space that only had light but was not dazzling to the eyes. Here, all sorts of beautiful sensations, romance, arousal, comfort, contentment, could be found. What tree is this? It looks rather mystical. Yin-Yang's gaze sharpened abruptly. This should be a native species of the demonic realm. None of us can call it by its real name. We're used to calling it the light of dust. Because his brilliance, although like a weak speck of dust, the brilliance emitted in the air is extremely humble and shallow, and his existence is even more temporary, but he still strives to add a little more beauty to this world, a little more brilliance. The elder's low voice was filled with frustration. Yin-Yang stood up abruptly and studied the quiet spot again and again. He looked at the direction, the sky, and the arrangement. Everyone should be staying under that tree often, right? Yin-Yang's gaze swept across the area sharply. Everyone was silent. Silence usually meant tacit agreement. What are all of you doing under that tree? Yin-Yang asked in a low voice. There was still silence, an awkward silence. After a long time, the old man said in a voice that was extremely difficult to speak, ahem. Cultivate under that tree. Or think. Even chat under that tree, drink tea, what else? Yin Yang asked. Cough cough, there will also be some young people, who will talk about love over there, or perhaps, when their love is at its peak, cough cough, Yin Yang's expression darkened at once. It was rare to see such an expression on Yin Yang's face. Yin Yang had long mastered the art of not showing his emotions on his face, keeping all his emotions in check. Now, however, he had actually lost his composure. Yin Yang thought about it and asked, can I go over and take a look? Ahem, of course. Yin Yang walked slowly into the area where the lush greenery was. It was only when he got closer that Yin Yang realized in shock what the forest looked like. It was even more mystical than what he had seen before. Just the flexibility of the branches and leaves had already reached an unimaginable level. It just hung down to the ground, extending a little, then stopped growing. This wasn't strange at all. When older weeping willows sprouted their branches, it was a similar situation. However, the many branches that hung down from this tree actually formed a wide space of their own. Countless drooping branches constructed many small houses that were naturally formed. Furthermore, they were the kind of fragrant, starry, and relatively private small spaces. Yin Yang took a closer look and realized that there were some small signs in the small houses. It read, "Do not disturb." Yin Yang understood its use at once. If he wanted to do something, he only needed to hang this small sign on the branches outside. Basically, it could prevent uninvited guests from entering and disturbing the peace. Yin Yang tried it out. He stayed inside and hung a small sign outside. Once the small sign was pasted on the soft branches, it hung on automatically. Then, Yin Yang realized in shock that the space had really become an absolutely sealed private space. Not even a speck of starlight could seep in. Even when he tried to move the surrounding branches, he could not move them. Only by extending his hand from where it had been and taking the sign down could he regain his freedom of entry and exit. Other than that, the people outside could not enter, and the people inside could not come out. How is this arrangement just mystical? It's simply unbelievable and appalling. Looking at the giant tree trunk that was so thick that it would take a dozen people to wrap their arms around it, Yin Yang's only thought was awe. To think that there was such a magical plant in this world. In the next moment, Yin Yang took the badge back and it returned to its original state, no different from before. Looking at the people outside, Yin Yang was silent for a while like the rest of them. He already knew what the main function of this private space was. It was the best place for men and women to meet. They could do whatever they wanted here. They did not have to worry about anything at all, nor did they have to worry about anyone interfering. At the same time, it was also the best place to calm down and cultivate in seclusion. Can a few people come? What for? A few cultivators with a higher cultivation base can meditate inside. Just concentrate on your usual cultivation, or it would be even better to comprehend the origin. The 3 trees on the left will do. All right. Can you find some young men and women, the kind that are deeply in love? Yin Yang made another outrageous request. At this point, it was obvious what he wanted the other party to do inside. It was easy to imagine. Yin Yang, who was a newbie in the field of love, was intelligent and quick-witted, but he still found it difficult to speak of it. It took him a long while to finish his sentence. All right. However, the people outside agreed readily. This place had been established for a long time. The local customs that had been formed were already different from the human territory. What Yin Yang had said was awkward, but it was to create opportunities for the young. To the residents here, it was an easy task. Other than these, no one is allowed to enter for the next few nights. No problem. I'll stay in this treehouse tonight and sense the situation carefully to see if there's a problem here. We'll talk about it later. Yin Yang said seriously. The 20 people outside fell into silence again. After a long while, they said, "Brother Yun, take care, please." Chapter 1259. After giving his instructions, Yun-Yang swayed and cast his long-awaited wood elemental power once more, becoming one with the tree and disappearing. Yun-Yang had actually transformed into the wood element, climbing upwards along the trunk of the tree as one. Although the tree's appearance was peculiar, it was only 1,000 feet tall. If the crown was not taken into account, the tree trunk looked to be at most hundreds of feet tall. Yun-Yang had confirmed all of this through his movements. There did not seem to be any problems. However, Yun-Yang still felt that something was amiss. There were no problems elsewhere, and there were no problems here as well. Then, where did the problem lie? It was impossible for the demonic realm to simply rear the human race, to provide them with ample food and clothing, to live peacefully until they died of old age. There must be a problem. There was no such logic. These people were not the parents of the demonic realm. The so-called no problem meant that the problem had yet to be discovered. The lush forest in front of him could be said to be the most suspicious point at the moment. When Yun-Yang cast his wood elemental power, it was like a gust of fresh air that slowly went up the tree trunk without any obstruction. However, when he looked to the top of the tree from the outside, the main trunk was still as thick as 5 to 6 people hugging around it, but when he looked up with his naked eye, there was nothing left. Yun-Yang's thoughts raced as he extended his deific consciousness to sense the area, but there was still nothing there. It was as if there was nothing above. In spite of this, the gust of fresh air that Yun-Yang had turned into was still floating up. This meant that there was still something above. It was just that it could not be seen with the naked eye and could not be sensed by deific consciousness. At the same time, it also meant that there was something fishy about this place, or perhaps, the truth was about to be revealed. The fresh air continued to move upwards. Gradually, it reached the top. The gigantic pillar propped up this place to this point. It was sealed tightly by a piece of sturdy crystal. It was equivalent to a sturdy ceiling. Then, Yun-Yang realized that while the rest of the area was tightly sealed, the trunk of the tree was extended out. This meant that a huge structure had been built and these trees were buried inside, leaving only the treetop outside. Yun-Yang tried his best to climb upwards carefully. The gap was very small. If it was not for Yun-Yang's manifestation powers, especially his wood element powers, which could be derived from wood, if it was anyone else, even if it was a Saint Lord, the most they could do was to force their way out. The rest could only sigh helplessly. He continued to climb upwards for hundreds of feet. Light appeared in front of him again. The thickness of this so-called ceiling was actually hundreds of feet. From this, one could see how careful the demon race had been when they built this place. The tree trunk appeared once again. It grew straight up. After climbing another 1,000 feet, they finally reached the top. It was still the same long line. Above them, there was still an extremely sturdy crystal ceiling. It was hard to tell how thick it was. At the tip of each tree, there was a thin, tender green branch that stood straight up. Above the branch, on the ceiling, was a small sun, a small moon, and a total of 108 twinkling stars. At the very center, there was a mysterious pattern. Yun-Yang could basically confirm that this was the key to the setup. He had found the place. In spite of this, he did not act recklessly. Instead, he continued to lurk here, keeping his guard up. He was waiting for the people below to make a move, observing the changes in silence. The 3 trees on the left were one of the targets he had set for the 3 of them to cultivate and comprehend later. The few trees on the right were reserved for the young couples. Yun-Yang did not ask which one it was. The young couples would choose randomly, so it was hard to say which one they would choose, but they probably would not choose to be next to each other. After a long time, Yun-Yang felt that at least 4 hours had passed. Finally, there was movement below. First, it was on the right side where the young couple was. The thin branches that extended from the top of a few trees shook slightly, almost beyond the naked eye. If Yun-Yang had not been paying attention and had spread his deific consciousness, it would have been difficult for him to notice it. However, it did not matter even if he did not notice the shaking of the thin branches, because as they shook, the patterns of the sun, moon, and stars above the branches lit up instantly. The sudden light was too dazzling. Even when Yun-Yang tried his best, he could only see wisps of gray fog slowly emerging from the tip of the branches. It was really just wisps. Then, the three lights spun and flickered again. The mysterious pattern in the middle suddenly emitted an extremely dense demonic chi, absorbing the wisps of strange aura without missing a single drop. Then, the tips of the 4 trees on the right moved at the same time, releasing wisps of gray gas one after the other. Something is wrong indeed. Yin-Yang thought to himself, the 4 young couples are in their respective sealed spaces, unable to control their emotions. They have done shameful things. As for this strange building of the demon race, or rather, some kind of formation, it should be absorbing the purest air of human reproduction and life when their emotions are at their peak. If my guess is correct, this should be the case. I roughly understand the situation here. What about the other side? Yin-Yang focused and directed his attention to the left. The time spent on the other side was even longer. After another 14 to 16 hours, only then did the tips of the 3 trees show signs of shaking. This time, although the energy extracted was very weak, much less than the trace of energy on the other side, it was slightly yellow, which was even more eye-catching. As the leader of a newly ascended Celestial Luck Banner sect, Yun-Yang immediately made a judgment and confirmed the root cause. This is the aura of the Celestial Luck Banner's energy. Yin-Yang could not help being shocked when he came to this conclusion. It was common knowledge that the Celestial Luck Banner was an intangible object that could not be destroyed. Such an object also meant that the energy contained within would not be transferred. However, the scene and result in front of him stirred waves in Yun-Yang's heart. The demon race actually had a way to achieve such an impossible result. With such a special method, they could slowly collect the origin energy aura. Even if they only collected a tiny bit of it each time, it would slowly accumulate year after year, generation after generation. One day, they would be able to enter the bound of universe effortlessly by relying on the aura they collected here. They would no longer need to pass through the Blood Soul Mountain or the Holy Land of Celestial Punishment to enter the bound of universe. When that time came, it would be the real catastrophe of the bound of universe. Most of the human experts were stationed at the Blood Soul Mountain, leaving it extremely empty inside, while the demon race came in from another passage. What would they do then? What could they use to resist? Yin-Yang even had more thoughts. Perhaps there was more than one passage similar to the one in the Holy Land of Celestial Punishment? Of course. There must be more than one place like the one below where humans were imprisoned. Perhaps there were a dozen or dozens of them, but they were all unknown. After all, the demon race had been robbing promising young human cultivators for some years. From this, Yin-Yang was almost certain that the opening of the Celestial Demon Passage in the Holy Land of Celestial Punishment this time was 99% related to this aura. This fact further indicated that the demon race had found the right way and had already put it into action. This was an earth-shattering secret. I dug a hole and filled it in. I have a headache now. GT. Chapter 1260. The demon race has found a way. Next time, it may not be as simple as a few decades earlier. Yun-Yang's eyes were extremely solemn. In the bound of universe, everyone who was qualified to know about the mystical demon war had the same thought. As long as the Blood Soul Mountain was not broken, the demon race would not be able to cross over. After so many years of accumulation, the human race already had a lot of Saint Lords. To put it bluntly, the human race's ability was getting stronger and stronger, surpassing the combined combat power of the human race in the past. Furthermore, due to the cruel laws of heaven and earth, the cultivators of the bound of universe had very little internal friction. Other than the middle and lower levels, where there would be killing amongst themselves, the higher level cultivators, especially those who were above the Saint Venerable rank, would almost never have any internal friction. All the high-level cultivators were preparing with all their might, waiting for the moment of the decisive battle with the demon race. However, most people thought that the decisive battle would never come. If the demon race came, they would only be seeking their own death. Perhaps the bound of universe did not have the ability to completely annihilate the demon race, but the overall strength of the demon race was definitely inferior to the bound of universe's human race. This was a fact that everyone believed. This assumption was undoubtedly optimistic, even Yun Yang thought so. However, Yun Yang now knew how ridiculous this optimism was. Humans had never thought of counterattacking the demon realm and had greatly underestimated the demon race. The demon race, on the other hand, had wanted to invade the bound of universe and destroy the human race from the beginning. Humans had never thought of entering the demon realm through any channels, but the demon race had been planning this since tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of years ago. Bypassing the Blood Soul Mountain and invading the bound of universe. With the warning from the Holy Land of Divine Punishment, the demon race's invasion of the human world is imminent and precarious. Yin Yang heaved a sigh, but a wave of helplessness soon followed. He thought of the humans who had been captured by the demon race. What would happen to these people down there? If they knew that they had been used by the demon race, what would they do? If they knew that as long as they were alive, there would be an endless source of energy for the demon race to invade the bound of universe, what would they do? The only solution now was to kill all the tens of thousands of humans below them. Then this base of the demon race would not be of use in a short period of time, at least for a few hundred years. This was something that Yun Yang could do with his current ability. He could even do it easily. However, how could Yun Yang do so? This was an unsolvable problem. Yin Yang had considered destroying the strange formation of the demonic race from here as well. This was the fundamental solution to the problem, but Yin Yang thought cautiously that with the demonic race's countless years of planning, as long as the formation was destroyed, the demonic race would know immediately as long as there was a certain degree of inflexibility in its operation. The group of people below would still face the same fate of losing their usefulness and death. Putting himself in Yin Yang's shoes, if he were to set up the formation himself, this function would be absolutely essential. Furthermore, the formation was not an ordinary one. Even with Yun Yang's current ability and his manifestation powers, he dared not guarantee that he could destroy the formation. After all, it was a formation set up by countless experts. Among them, there were definitely Saint Monarchs. With Yun Yang's current ability, previously, when Crane King had lured Yun Yang into the trap, Yun Yang's pretense of attacking and clawing did not hide much of his combat power. As for the door, it did not budge at all. Thinking back to Crane King's attitude when he left, anyone below the level of a Saint Monarch would probably sigh helplessly and be powerless against this area. Alerting the enemy would not be a good thing. Forget it. Let's try from the edge of the formation first. Yin Yang frowned, having made up his mind. If there's a flaw in the formation, these people might not necessarily die. If the demonic race wants to successfully breed so many humans, they'll need a lot of resources and effort. They might not be willing to sacrifice all these people. After all, after the formation is repaired, they'll still need these people to provide energy inside. If they go out and catch more people, who knows how long it'll take to reach the current scale. Yin Yang looked at the strange trees in front of him, his deific consciousness already connected with Emmy. Emmy, do you recognize these trees? Yin Yang was very confident. When it came to plants, no one in this world would know them better than Emmy. Speaking of Emmy, after it had leveled up, it would patrol the space excitedly every day, even though its limping steps were still unsightly and looked a little comical. Still, it was never tired of it. To Emmy, this sense of bliss was incomparable. Shockingly, the medicinal field beneath him that had already expanded to an extremely large area had a few million stalks of spirit herbs, and it was a magnificent sight that caused one to gasp in amazement. Even if anyone in the universe were to see it, they would have to gasp in amazement. Every time it thought of this, Emmy was satisfied. All mine. All of this is mine. That was great. How wonderful. All of these can be turned into my energy of vitality. Ha ha ha. Hearing Yun Yang summon and the implication of his words being related to spiritual herbs, Emmy was overjoyed and ran out at once. What's so good about it? In spite of it, Emmy was slightly dumbfounded when it saw the tree, calling out in confusion. It could feel the immense energy within, but what was this? Aya. It then asked Yunyang to pluck a twig for it to take a look. Pluck a twig? Yunyang did not have the guts to make such a huge commotion, so he only plucked a few leaves and passed them over carefully. Emmy accepted the leaves and squeezed out some of the sap within, crying out immediately, Aya, you're saying that this is the soul-devouring tree? Demon? Yunyang's heart skipped a beat as realization dawned upon him. The name alone was enough to explain everything. The soul-devouring tree absorbs all the energy of souls and deific senses around it, turning them into its own nutrients. The current situation is obviously being used by the demon race and bestowed with other abilities. Through the unique formation, the soul-devouring tree absorbs the source of the celestial luck banner, the source of life, and the source of soul that seeped out when those people were cultivating, as well as the purest and most primitive air of vitality produced when a man and a woman have sex. Yunyang said quietly in his heart, so, I understand completely. Why did the demon race build such a place? Why do they keep these people for nothing? Their positions are obviously opposite and there is no room for negotiation, but they still don't give any restrictions and even allow these humans to thrive here. It turned out that this was their intention, the soul demon I met before. If it could have such a soul-devouring tree to nourish it. I'm afraid it could break through the shackles. This piece of information sent by Emmy made Yunyang's heart skip a beat. The soul demon was strong enough now. If it went a step further, even a saint would not be able to keep it in check. That fellow must not know about these trees. Emmy, take a good look at the formation above. Can it be destroyed? Yunyang asked. Emmy quietly stretched out a branch and, after a probe, waved the branch and cried out in Yunyang's subconscious. It's very difficult to destroy. Once you try to destroy it, you will inevitably suffer a backlash. The power of the backlash above far exceeds your current cultivation base level. Even with the aid of various manifestation powers, it will be difficult to resist. Yunyang frowned suddenly. Then what should I do? Are we just going to wait for death? Emmy waved its vines very contemptuously. The formation is difficult to destroy, but it doesn't mean that these soul-devouring tree demons can't destroy it. There is no plant in this world that I can't clean up. Yunyang was confused. The soul-devouring tree and the formation are closely connected, almost regarded as one. If the formation can't be destroyed, I'm afraid the soul-devouring tree will be the same. Once it is targeted, it will trigger the formation's backlash. Bah, since coming to the bound of universe, your brain has become more and more rigid. Where is the intelligence and wisdom of the past? Where is the wisdom of supreme wit? Even if the soul-devouring tree is closely connected to the formation, its nature is still different. The tree is the tree, the formation is the formation. Where, it is there. The sprout on it, is the essence of the soul-devouring tree, but it is also the most vulnerable place of the soul-devouring tree. Yunyang understood at once. The main reason why this soul-devouring tree had to add another barrier in that position was because it could not be seen by others. Why don't you just say how to destroy it? Destroy the sprout? There are many ways to achieve the effect of destruction. Are you really stupid? Emmy was very disdainful as it squeaked in disdain. Such a tender sprout can be destroyed with just a breath, and you still have to ask me? I mean, how can I not be discovered by the demon race and achieve the effect of permanent destruction, the kind that can't be repaired? Yunyang smirked mischievously. After finding the crux of the problem, his mood became extraordinarily relaxed, not feeling offended by a certain fellow's mockery. I'll let you be happy for now. But everything you're proud of, it's all mine. It's all mine. Aya, Emmy wore a look that said, I didn't expect you to be so bad, you're still the bad one. Inexplicably, Yunyang imagined a little girl squinting at him coquettishly, and it actually made him feel weak all over. However, hearing Emmy's answer, Yunyang was baffled. Although the soul-devouring tree is a demonic tree, it can't be contaminated by demonic energy. It can only absorb souls. The demonic energy is useless to it. If it enters the tree's core, it will even cause damage. To achieve permanent damage, demonic energy is needed. Once the demonic energy is used to cause damage, it's inevitable that it will be discovered. As Yin Yang pondered, many of his previous questions were answered. So this was the reason why the demons were not allowed to enter this place. Is there any other way not to be discovered? If you want to be completely undiscovered, you can't do permanent damage. The soul-devouring tree has an unusually vigorous vitality. As long as there's 100 years, most of the damage can be healed. 100 years, Yin Yang frowned and said decisively, 100 years is enough. Destroying it for 100 years would be enough for him to carry out the follow-up. As long as the air of death is channeled into the soul-devouring tree's core, a certain degree of damage can be done. As the air of death enters the soul-devouring tree's core, the soul-devouring tree will look the same, but it won't absorb energy anymore. At least 100 years later, when the soul-devouring tree has completely assimilated the air of death and returned to its basic state, only then will it absorb energy from the outside world again. All right. Yin Yang suddenly had a thought. Emmy, aren't you good at absorbing and assimilating the vitality of spiritual plants? Can you do anything to this soul-devouring tree? Can I? Emmy cried out in surprise. Of course you can, but you still have to be careful. Don't let them die completely. Take it easy. Yin Yang grinned mischievously. The legendary wisdom of the 9 Supremes was nowhere to be seen. Emmy was excited when it heard him. It had thought that Yin Yang did not intend to let it touch the tree at all when it saw how careful he was even when he was destroying it. It did not expect that it could still feast on it. What a pleasant surprise. The soul-devouring tree in front of it had a strong foundation. The energy contained within was not just a great supplement, it was obviously a great supplement. Even if it could not devour too much, it was still a great pleasure. It had profited again this time. If I absorb it, then I don't have to emit the air of death anymore. The buds at the tip of Emmy's vine were restless, moving around Yin Yang's palm like a spoiled child, tickling Yin Yang. Can you absorb about 80% of the soul-devouring tree's life force? 80%? Then it would take at least 1,000 years to recover. The buds on the outside can't be seen through by those with a discerning eye. As long as you can ensure this, do it quickly. Emmy. Absorb as much as you can. Yin Yang was overjoyed as he instructed cautiously. Looking at the row of thousands of soul-devouring trees, Yin Yang's eyes shone brightly. As long as it was useful to Emmy, it was fine. These thousands of trees were undoubtedly a treasure trove. What was left was only the problem of how to get out. Chapter 1261. I was physically and mentally exhausted. The plot was basically sorted out. I just needed to continue. However, I didn't feel anything writing these few days. It was tasteless. There were so many things at home that I was about to explode. The old man took a fancy to this courtyard 2 years ago. It was indeed very good. I knew that there were no procedures, but I still bought it. Why? First, the environment was good, and it was big enough. It was 17 or 18 mu of land. Second, it was cheap. Third, although there were no procedures, there were many families here in the past 15 to 16 years. There were thousands of families here. Nothing had happened yet. I bought it, so it was against the construction, so it was demolished. This matter, the policy was there. I could only admit that I was unlucky. I admit it. However, the old man couldn't get over it. In addition, he was old, so he took it to heart. He thought that he had squandered his son's money. I had no choice but to find a few brothers to be the ones to lie to the old man. At that time, the family lost money in business. We actually only gave them the first sum of money. We didn't give anything else. It wasn't much, just a few $100,000. It didn't matter. The house was gone, but the things that were demolished could still be sold for $200,000 to $300,000. The loss was very small, so it didn't matter. All right, the old man was skeptical. It was considered over. However, his wife's heart ached. During this period of time, I've been. All right, I can only describe it with 2 words: I want to die. A few million, just like that, then, I can only vent it on him. What else should I do? I don't even dare to go home now. Men are so difficult. It's so damn difficult. In this life, I've made up countless lies, and I'm still making them up. I bear everything by myself. If I can't bear it, you're King useless. I can bear it, I've endured it. All right, brother, can you lend me some money? Now, there's only one feeling: physical and mental exhaustion. I have a wish: in my next life, I will never be a man. In my next life, I will be a woman. I don't care about anything, I only care about complaining. Men don't earn money, no ability, no future, no ambition. Women don't earn money, her man can't. Her man had nothing better to do. Her man is stupid. Her man can't even afford to raise his wife and children. Today, I went to my comrade's tavern alone and ordered a few dishes and a bottle of wine. I wanted to vent my frustrations, but my comrade was so busy, so I had to drink by myself. Then he locked the door from the inside and cursed as he shouted. Who do I owe? What sins did he commit in his past life? Mother****. He was actually a man in this life. He even locked the door when he was cursing someone. What the hell? Last thank you for never looking at the internet. Thank you, my wife, for never surfing the internet. Otherwise, I wouldn't even have a place to complain. Then he recommended 2 songs. The first song, Men Are Just Tired. The second song, I Want to Be Alone. I really need some peace and quiet. Chapter 1262. Yin-Yang stayed on the soul-devouring tree for a full day and night to ensure that nothing would go wrong. It was only when Emmy had absorbed the vitality of thousands of trees from tree to tree and confirmed repeatedly that there was no longer any devouring function that it stopped. The sprout at the tip seemed to have lost some of its luster, but it was still green and straight. There was nothing unusual about it. Only then did he feel relieved. When he came down, the few elders who were waiting below had been waiting anxiously. When they saw Yin-Yang return, they rushed up to him with anxious expressions, anxiety written all over their faces. Yin-Yang was the first person who had allowed them to feel the closest to the truth since the establishment of this realm. They were desperate to know the truth, but there was also some fear of the unknown in addition to their eagerness. Were our guesses right? Did they really absorb anything from us? How is it? Did you find anything? Yin-Yang sucked in a breath and said, We're right. The problem lies with these trees. The group's expression darkened. I'd like to hear the details. These trees aren't as simple as they look. There's a hidden, unique function. All those who cultivate under the trees or engage in sexual activity will have a bit of the refined life force, deific consciousness comprehension, and the celestial luck banner's chi of celestial luck extracted. It's especially obvious when it comes to absorbing the life force and chi of creation that overflows during sexual activity. Each time he spoke of the consequences, the group's expression grew darker. In the end, they were all dejected. An elder looked dejected, but he muttered softly, Is that true? But we've been in this realm for many years. Other than the lack of advancement in our cultivation base, there aren't any other negative effects. What you said we've lost is the essence of life force cultivation. How can we be fine? Yin-Yang shook his head. Actually, your abnormalities have been apparent for a long time. It's just a leaf that blinds the eye. Please recall, if all of you were the cream of the crop from your sect back then, the cream of the crop. How is your cultivation base advancement in this realm? Even if this isn't the bound of universe and isn't a good place to cultivate, should your cultivation base stop there? Why is this so? Then there's your descendants. How are their talents? How many of them are gifted? Why is this so? And your celestial luck banners, the celestial luck banner that's said to be indestructible, are actually damaged? Aren't these all proof? Listening to Yun Yang, the group's expression grew darker. Yes, these were all visible. These abnormalities should not have occurred. According to what I know, there's a celestial demonic door in the holy land of heaven's punishment in the bound of universe. This celestial demonic door was left behind when the bound of universe was divided back then. It opens once every 100 years, and the demon race attacks from there. Their strategic purpose is basically similar to the Blood Soul Peak. As long as they successfully break through the door, they will be able to set foot on the bound of universe, and the demon race will descend upon the bound of universe. However, the countless mystical beasts in the holy land of heaven's punishment have guarded this door for tens of thousands of years, and the demon race has never been able to take a step past it. However, the demon race used the celestial luck banner's power of providence to shift the opening time forward by a whole 30 years. We almost fell into the enemy's hands. Even if the Tian Fa Holy Land gave everything they had and managed to defend against this wave of attacks, it would still be a huge blow to their vitality. I'm not sure if they would be able to recover before the next 100 years holy war. What's more worrying is whether the 100 years holy war is still accurate. Perhaps it won't be 100 years, but 70 years, or even shorter. And once the sky demon passageway falls, it would be in the Xianhuang world. And where does the power of the heavenly fortune of the demon race come from? Yun Yang sighed and did not speak further. The dozen or so people who were waiting for Yun Yang were dumbfounded. Things were already laid out clearly in front of them, and there was no room for doubt. The lack of a corner on the celestial luck banner was a fact that they had witnessed with their own eyes, and the slow progress of their cultivation base was even more obvious. There was also the problem of the talents of their descendants, which was a problem that had long been puzzling them. All of this, however, directly and indirectly proved that the purpose of the demon clan supporting them was to extract the origin of life from them and the power of the celestial luck banner to open the passage of the universe. I can't believe that we've been used by the demon race without knowing it. We've all thought that we're unyielding and have a clear conscience, but we didn't expect that it's the scum like us who live an ignoble existence and are afraid of death who are always carrying out great things that endanger the well-being of mankind. An elder sighed with his head held high. This old man was among the first batch of captives and brought here. Until today, how much energy have I provided for the demon race to counterattack the bound of universe? As he spoke, he suddenly burst into tears, sobbing uncontrollably. The others also looked mournful and inexplicable. Elder Mao, what's the point of regretting now? What should we do in the future? A middle-aged man with a somber expression finally asked the most difficult question for everyone to face. Elder Mao took a deep breath, a resolute look in his eyes. What else can we do? We've already endangered the safety of the entire bound of universe. The two methods must be carried out simultaneously. First, we must destroy all these trees. Then we'll destroy ourselves. As soon as Elder Mao said this, the entire place fell into a dead silence. Some people could not help but turn their heads to look at the flickering lights in the night sky. There were their own families, children, and wives there. Although their families were all prisoners, they still had to enjoy the happiness of a family. How could they let go of the worries of such a large family so easily? Kill them all? Easier said than done. It's not just these two methods. Although there's a difference in priority, at the end of the day, we're all going to die. Once the trees are destroyed, the demon race will naturally know that we've already found out their secret, and they won't let us live anymore. The more than 83,000 lives here are all destined to die in the future. Another person murmured in a low voice. Elder Mao suddenly turned his head and said angrily, "What else can we do? Continue to play dumb? Should he continue to struggle at death's door? Continue to act as a charging machine for the demon race and provide energy for them? Wait until the demon race has gathered enough energy to destroy the bound of universe. We can die. But let the children who don't cultivate live. One person said with tears in his eyes, the children are innocent. Chapter 1263. Fools. Idiots. If we die, will the children still be of any use? Old Mao's gaze was as cold as lightning. Even if they can survive, they'll just end up as the demon's slaves, or be humiliated or toyed with. Do you want your descendants to live like this? Do you think the peaceful days now are the demon's mercy? To break the illusion before us, the only way is to face life and death. Either we die for a noble cause, or we don't want to live without purpose. Everyone lowered their heads and did not say a word. Gather all the leaders here for a meeting. Elder Mao took a deep breath, his voice determined. Today, we're here to end everything. To do what we're supposed to do as humans. There was still reluctance, pity, and sorrow in the others' eyes, but they still turned and left without a word, obviously going to inform the rest. I'd rather die than do anything to harm the bound of universe. We're humans. A series of earth-shaking roars rang out. So what if we die? This old man has lived long enough. If it weren't for the obsession in my heart, wanting to see the demons annihilated with my own eyes, I'm afraid I'd have killed myself long ago. Now is fine as well. Elder Mao raised his head and closed his eyes, breathing deeply. After a long time, he said, let all of this end. Yin Yang's eyes lit up at once, shockingly bright. He did not mention that the soul-devouring tree had been destroyed by him and could no longer absorb the people's energy. He did not mention it because he wanted to see these people's temperaments. He would not be disappointed if these people were cowardly and shameless. He would only scorn them in his heart and leave alone, no longer caring about everyone's deific consciousness. Now, however, there was only admiration in his heart. These people were indeed the cream of the crop of the human celestial luck banner sects. To be able to make such a resolute decision after knowing the danger, it required a great deal of courage and boldness. Yin Yang was well aware of this and could even empathize with it. This determination was vaguely similar to how the 8 Supremes had sacrificed themselves to protect him back then. Yin Yang knew that he could not sit back and watch these people perish just like this. There's no need to go to extremes, Yin Yang stopped them. What? Everyone stopped and looked at him, their eyes filled with confusion. In their opinion, they were going to die no matter what, so it was better to sacrifice their lives as soon as possible. This extreme course of action was inevitable. I stayed here for a long time just now because I was dealing with those demonic trees. Now, I've extracted a considerable amount of life force from those demonic trees and poured death energy into them to prevent them from recovering. Yin Yang was straightforward. It won't have its original effect for at least 1,000 years. The reason I didn't say it was because I wanted to see what all of you would do. Forgive me for being petty, please don't blame me. Everyone was dumbfounded. Then, a few of them groaned and let out a breath. Their bodies fell to the ground and choked with sobs. Just now, everyone had indeed made up their minds. They would first destroy the demonic tree, then go home and kill their wives and children with their own hands, and then commit suicide. Human hearts were made of flesh and blood. Even though they knew that it was the right thing to do and that it was the right thing to do, they still felt as if their hearts were being pierced by thousands of arrows. Their only thought was to finish everything as soon as possible, to put an end to this once and for all. In spite of this, when they suddenly heard Yin Yang's words, it was more than like they had just been pardoned. Their hearts were at ease. Everyone understood what Yin Yang meant when he said that he was a petty person. After all, these people had been here for a long time. No one could guarantee that they would still have the same tenacity as before. 1,000 years? Elder Mao caught the key point of the 4 words. That's right. I can guarantee that there won't be any energy absorption like before, at least within 1,000 years. Yin Yang nodded affirmatively. What about 1,000 years later? Elder Mao asked. Elder Mao and many other elders had stayed here for more than 1,000 years. The question was not abrupt but necessary. These demonic trees will recover after 1,000 years. Yin Yang enunciated each word clearly. If we still haven't rescued all of you by then, these 1,000 years will belong to all of you, no matter what. They won't harm the human race. Elder Mao was taken aback. Even if you live for another 1,000 years, what's the use? Isn't it good to have 1,000 years? Humans are only qualified to talk about the future when they're alive. These 1,000 years may be the opportunity for you to see the human experts fight their way here and rescue you. Yin Yang looked at him steadily. So, I hope that all of you can persevere a little longer and live on. Elder Mao's eyes shone. You said just now, we still haven't rescued all of you. You mean you can get out? Yin Yang smiled faintly. The main reason I've infiltrated the demonic realm this time is to investigate the truth behind the demonic race's abduction of human geniuses. I have some tricks up my sleeves. The imprisonment here isn't too much of a challenge for me, but I still have to go to other similar buildings to do the same thing, so, Elder Mao lowered his head and pondered. After a long time, he finally said, Brother Yun, do you have any medicinal pills that can extend your lifespan? Or treasures of heaven and earth? This old man's lifespan is less than 600 years. I'm worried that I won't be able to see the situation 1,000 years later. What changes will happen when I'm gone? This old man wants to live until then. I don't want to die with regret. At least, if all of you hadn't come by then, this old man hopes that I can still carry on with the 2 uncontested missions today. Uncontested missions? Destroying the demonic tree, killing his entire family and committing suicide? Yin Yang nodded solemnly. I do. Please grant it. 1,000 years. Before Yin Yang left, all the adults in the area were murmuring these 3 words. Perhaps, this would be the final time limit in this area. They did not have to worry about harming the human race's interests in these 1,000 years. They could enjoy the joy of family. Perhaps at the end of 1,000 years, what everyone had been waiting for was not the day they were rescued, but the day they all walked to the netherworld together. Elder Mao, take care of yourselves. Don't give up hope. Yin Yang sucked in a soft breath. I'm leaving. Elder Mao cupped his fists. Sect leader Yun, we have another request. We hope that when you return, you can pay a visit to the sect where we're from. Tell them that we're still alive, that we haven't betrayed humanity. We're still disciples with celestial luck banners. Yin Yang nodded. I will. There's a traitor among us. This fellow showed my wife a screenshot of me last night. Brother, or sister, you're cutting off my only channel of ridicule. You're killing me. Chapter 1264. Through the conversation just now, everyone knew Yun Yang's identity and background, as well as the purpose of their trip. Take care. The group cupped their fists in greeting, their voices sincere. Yin Yang laughed. Don't worry, everyone. Perhaps it won't be long before all of you can return to the human territory. When the time comes, I'll have all the sects with celestial luck banners in the bound of universe come to welcome you. The human race's benevolence shall never die, our heroic souls shall never die, we shall not regret it. Thank you, we're all looking forward to the arrival of that day. Elder Mao chuckled bitterly. Would that day really come? It's really fascinating. Under everyone's watchful eyes, Yun Yang's body gradually faded into nothingness, turning into a gust of wind or a cloud. Whatever it was, he melted into the crystal door and disappeared. Go back. Elder Mao stared at where Yun Yang had disappeared for a long time before saying in a low voice, everyone, go back. From today onwards, all of you must remember the 3 words, 1,000 years. Don't worry. No matter what, we won't be embarrassed by the word human. When the time comes, when it's the last moment, as long as Elder Mao gives the order, we'll be on our way together. We won't have to worry about loneliness when we go to the netherworld together. The group spoke in unison. But this time, sect leader Yun's arrival has ignited hope in this old man's heart. With such an amazing person among us humans, why should we worry that we can't annihilate the demon race? Elder Mao smiled and said, "Everyone, let us wait patiently together. No one is allowed to say a word about sect leader Yun. Only follow sect leader Yun's instructions and speak in unison." A fox demon once came in, but it disappeared inexplicably. Yes. The Crane King would never have thought that the underground base that he thought was impregnable, that even the phantoms could not enter, was completely useless to this violet whom he wanted to imprison. He turned into gold and slowly seeped in. He turned into soil and slowly protruded outwards. He turned into water and slowly flowed. He turned into clouds and entered and exited. It had only been 2 hours since Yun Yang had used his manifestation powers in turn, and he had already returned to the ground without anyone noticing. However, when Yun Yang confirmed that he could see the light of day again, he still heaved a heavy sigh of relief. The demon race's peculiar prison was monitored by divine senses everywhere. Even with Yun Yang's mystical manifestation powers, he had to expend a great deal of effort to avoid all of them. Actually, it was not just him. The return trip had exhausted Emmy as well. If Yun Yang had only relied on his own ability and manifestation powers, he would have been able to come out, but he would not have been able to avoid being detected by all the deific consciousness. Emmy had exerted a great deal of effort in order to avoid being detected by the deific consciousness. If he had not feasted on the soul-devouring tree, he might not have been able to bear the burden. It had only been 5 to 6 days underground, but Yun Yang felt as if he had been in another lifetime. At this moment, Tianguan City was no longer as peaceful and prosperous as it was before. Instead, it was filled with chaos and chaos. Countless Crane tribe warriors flew into the sky and patrolled the surroundings. There were even more teams patrolling the streets. There were also many experts coming and going in a hurry, as though they were searching for something. What's the matter? Yin Yang, who had transformed into the face of an elder from the Fox tribe, grabbed a demon by the roadside and handed him a handful of saint coins. The demon who was caught was about to explode in anger when he suddenly received a large handful of saint coins. His anger turned to joy and he hurriedly tucked it into his robes. It's nothing. It's just that a few bears suddenly went crazy and set fires everywhere in the city a few days ago. They left a message asking the city lord to release their master. Now, we don't know where those bears are hiding. The city lord is furious about this and has ordered the whole city to search for them. When the demon finished, seeing that Yun Yang did not respond, he quickly slipped away. So much wealth had been exchanged for a few words for no reason. It was at least enough for him to live freely for a month. How comfortable. However, Yun Yang stood rooted to the ground, stunned. He had never thought that White Bear Bai and the other bear demons would actually do such a great thing for him. For a moment, he could not help but feel a surge of emotions. Sky Crown City occupied a large area. This was just the inner city, but it was already home to hundreds of thousands of people. If the outer city and the slums outside were added, there would be even more places for people to hide. Yin Yang had no intention of hiding now. His high-speed movement was like a phantom, constantly appearing in every corner of Sky Crown City. One moment, he was roaming in the west of the city, the next, he was already strolling in the east. At this moment, he was still roaming in the city center. In the blink of an eye, he was already searching in the slums. It was truly like a phantom that was both real and illusory, shuttling back and forth and appearing in various places. Yin Yang had no intention of hiding himself at all. Of course, his current appearance was still the so-called Violet of the Fox tribe's expert. This fox demon, who was known to have a precious treasure, had reappeared this time. He was uncharacteristically brutal. Once he encountered the experts of the Crane tribe, he would strike forcefully and kill them as quickly as possible. Then, he continued to roam around, seemingly aimless but also having a target in mind. Not only did he kill the demons, he even mutilated their bodies so that they could not return to the arms of the demonic forefather. Violet deserves to die. More and more experts were dispatched from the residence of the city lord. Following that, another question lingered in the minds of many high-level demons. How did the city lord offend such a terrifying expert? Why did he go to such extremes? Why did he have to provoke such an expert for the crane race at such a time? Moreover, it was a mortal enemy like the one in front of them. What was the king thinking? There were even more intelligent ones who vaguely came to the conclusion that there must be a reason for the Fox clan's expert to be so ruthless. After all, if the demons had not been forced to a certain extent, if their hatred had not reached an irreconcilable level that drove them mad, they would rarely do something like killing for the cores. Then, what had the king done? In Sky Crown City, Yin-Yang's silhouette flickered in and out of sight. Each time he appeared, he would take the lives of a few or even a dozen crane race experts. The stench of blood in the city did not dissipate with the passage of time. Instead, it gradually spread and grew stronger. As the experts of the crane race were killed, their true forms were revealed. Giant crane carcasses were strewn all over Sky Crown City, a ghastly sight to behold. The Crane King was already close to insanity, wishing that he could swallow the despicable old fox alive. Violet. He roared into the sky, I am here. Come out and fight me if you have the guts. Every wrong has its perpetrator, every debt has its debtor. I will fight you to the death, come out. His voice traveled far away, but there was no direct response. Only cries of agony could be heard coming from all directions, one after another, endlessly. Chapter 1265. Crane King was enraged. The incessant screams meant that Violet did not care about him at all. He only cared about killing. This knowledge made Crane King so angry that he was about to explode. Violet. Come out. Come out. After roaring angrily for a while, the Crane King suddenly remembered something important. Violet had been tricked into the underground prison by him. How did he get out? Compared to Violet's strength and the massacre he had committed, how he had managed to escape became a trivial detail that was not even worth mentioning. If he did not handle this well, it would be a disaster that would affect the welfare of his entire family. Thinking of this, Crane King fell into a state of panic. How he got out was no longer the most important point. The most important thing was, what was going on in the underground prison now? That Violet, did he do something again? And his strength, did he hide it from the start, or did he make use of the humans in the underground prison? It would be fine if these two things happened, but what if other factors contributed to his great improvement in strength? Crane King did not dare to imagine any further. As the lord of a city, he naturally knew the importance of the underground prison. At the same time, he also knew that if something really went wrong there, even if he, as the ruler of Sky Crown City, had 100 lives, it wouldn't be enough to compensate for it. But, logically speaking, nothing should have happened. In the underground prison, as long as there was an energy fluctuation that exceeded a certain level, it would attract the attention of the high-level guards above, and they would carry out the killing. How was it possible for Violet to unleash her power without being detected? He was a demon, and by right, once he went in, he would be discovered very quickly. If he was discovered, he would not be able to live. But besides, even if the guards were negligent, how could he enter and exit without being detected? Even though the old fox's battle prowess was shocking, it was still far from that level. He must have hidden his strength from the start. At most, he must have extracted a considerable amount of the human's primordial energy and godly spirits to strengthen himself. It must be one of these two possibilities. Just as he was contemplating, another 5 or 6 screams came from a few thousand feet to his left. Most likely, more experts of the Crane clan had been killed. Furthermore, the range of the enemy's massacre had clearly begun to shift towards the outside of the city. This meant that the other party was fighting and walking at the same time. It was very likely that he had already determined that his disciples were not in the city and wanted to escape. Crane King's eyes flashed. Violet, listen up. If you dare to escape, this king will issue a kill order right now and kill your 7 Bear Clan disciples without mercy. The Crane King had just finished speaking when a hoarse sneer came from afar. This old man is really suspicious. How did the throne of the Crane tribe land in your hands? Did the Crane race choose their king based on stupidity? Now, the entire sky-crowned city is filled with your stupidity. It's suffocating me, ha ha ha. The voice rang out from the south. The other party no longer concealed himself, nor did he change his direction as he rushed straight towards the south. That old fox has left the city. The Crane King suddenly stopped moving at high speed in the air. His expression was extremely ugly. That old fox had actually guessed that he had not captured his 7 disciples. Retreat. No demons are allowed to move, don't startle the fox. That old fox is too agile, it's hard to stop him. Since that's the case, we'll wait for him to meet up with his disciples, then we'll annihilate him. At that time, he will have reservations and will not be able to move around as he pleases. We'll naturally be able to kill him. Brilliant plan. Although that was what he said, the Crane King's face had already turned ashen as he accepted the compliments of the demons. That feeling of his chest exploding from anger did not subside at all. Instead, it became more and more intense. How many years has it been? This king has never suffered such humiliation. What's worse was that there was a faint sense of fear that did not stop at all. Over at the underground prison, what exactly happened? This question lingered in his mind, almost driving him crazy. Yet, he did not dare to voice it out and let any demons know about it. In fact, this was the real reason why he temporarily stopped the battle. No matter what, he had to go down and ascertain the situation. Please, 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 don't let anything really happen. The Crane King strode into the city lord's manor, completely ignoring all the madams who came to greet him. He even sent a concubine who came up to him flying with a slap. He shouted angrily, "Get lost. Eternal youth to hell." There was one more sentence that he did not dare to say, "It's you bunch of pretentious people, that caused me such a huge mess." At this moment, the Crane King was truly filled with grief and indignation. He felt that if he were to say that sentence out loud, perhaps, he would have to cry. Everyone in the city knew that he had offended the other party, but they did not know the price he had to pay. Yet, this was the greatest secret that could not be divulged no matter what. If people knew that he had brought someone into the secret dimension, and the person involved had escaped, just this alone was enough for him to lose his head, completely ignoring the concubine who was covering her face and wailing pitifully on the ground. The Crane King rushed into the residence anxiously and entered the secret passage again. This time, the Crane King was no longer as calm as before. He had unleashed his maximum speed from the beginning, rushing to the lowest level like a whirlwind. He saw 2 Crane clan guards standing there with their backs straight. "My king, why are you here again?" The 2 guards had never seen the Crane King come so frequently before. But now, he had come twice in 7 to 8 days. What was going on? "Is everything all right over here?" the Crane King asked tentatively. "Everything is normal," the guard replied calmly. This answer had been repeated for countless years, and it was difficult not to be calm. Everything is normal? Is everything really normal? The Crane King was at a loss. How could it be normal? Now, there was a living demon that had escaped from the flawless underground prison. It should not be normal no matter how one looked at it. "I had a sudden impulse a few days ago, and something seemed wrong. Open the door and let me take a look." The Crane King had already sensed that something was wrong, and naturally would not give up just because of the guard's words. "All right, but my king, please come out as soon as possible. If you stay for too long, the demonic aura might be triggered," the guard reminded instinctively. I know. The Crane King squeezed in through the gap of the door. Looking around, he saw that the human activities inside were normal, as if no demons had entered at all. Nothing out of the ordinary had happened. Even when the door was opened, the humans did not notice anything. They were still doing what they were supposed to do. The children were still running around happily, and smoke was rising from the chimneys on the roofs. It was a peaceful and harmonious scene. Nothing really happened. The Crane King's eyes widened in disbelief. He wanted to go in and ask in detail, but he did not dare to. The underground prison was extremely sensitive to demonic aura. If he was discovered, it would be a disaster. He released his divine sense and scanned the space around him as if he was flying. There was indeed nothing out of the ordinary. It was fine as long as there was nothing going on in here. The Crane King's heart was finally at ease. However, there was still an unsolved mystery in his heart. That old fox, how did he get out of here? Yin Yang, who had left at top speed, had to go. He was more than happy to stay and slaughter the entire Crane clan. He wanted to avenge the tens of thousands of his human compatriots who were imprisoned below. Just as he was happily slaughtering, for terrifying auras rose from the four corners of the city, each of them was comparable to the Crane Kings. It was obvious that four Supreme Saint experts had come together. If he were to be surrounded by this lineup, Yin Yang would not be in danger, but he could no longer be as secretive as he was now. Exposing his whereabouts was only a minor issue. The key was that once he fought with all his might, the aura of his celestial luck banner would inevitably be exposed.